As you settle into your bed tonight, let your mind drift to the gentle process of aging. While often feared, growing older brings surprising gifts and wisdom. Each year adds layers to our story, creating depth and meaning. Behind every wrinkle lies decades of laughter, learning, and love. Long before Instagram filters and anti-aging creams, ancient civilizations had something we've forgotten. They actually celebrated getting older. Wild concept, right? The Greeks believed wisdom literally accumulated in your bones over time. They had a saying that translating roughly means gray hair is a crown of glory. Not exactly the message we get from modern beauty ads. In ancient China, reaching 60 was such a big deal, they threw massive parties called kanreki celebrations. The whole community would gather to honor someone's accumulated life experience. Imagine that happening today. Congratulations on your wrinkles. Here's cake. But here's what's fascinating. The oldest recorded human lifespan stories aren't just about living long. They're about living purposefully. Take Methuselah, who supposedly lived 969 years. Whether you believe that number or not, every culture that tells his story focuses on his wisdom, not his appearance. The Romans had respect your elders built into their legal system, literally. The word Senate comes from senex, meaning old man. They figured if you'd survived long enough to get gray hair, you probably knew something worth hearing. Traditional cultures worldwide created elaborate ceremonies just for elderhood. These weren't pity parties. They were celebrations of survival, knowledge, and earned peace. Speaking of survival, your brain has some surprising tricks up its sleeve as you age. Your brain plays a fascinating trick on you as you age. While everyone worries about forgetting where they put their keys, something remarkable happens behind the scenes. You actually get better at managing your emotions. Think about it. When you were 20, a rude comment from a stranger could ruin your entire day. Now, you might just chuckle and think, well, someone's having a rough morning. That's not just wisdom. It's your brain literally rewiring itself for peace. Scientists call this the emotional regulation advantage. Your prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, becomes incredibly skilled at putting things in perspective. It's like having a really good therapist living rent-free in your head, constantly reminding you what actually matters. Here's where it gets even better. Older adults consistently outperform younger people in conflict resolution. You know why? You've seen this movie before. That dramatic argument that seems earth-shattering to a 30-year-old. You recognize it as Tuesday. Your brain has filed away thousands of similar situations and developed a beautiful shortcut. Most conflicts aren't worth the energy. The strangest part? Your brain starts filtering out negative information more effectively. It's like having built-in rose-colored glasses that actually improve your mental health. Who knew aging came with its own happiness software upgrade? But there's something even more soothing about how your skin changes over time. Look at your grandmother's hands for a moment. Those gentle lines aren't random. They're rivers carved by decades of laughter, worry, and everything in between. Each wrinkle follows a precise path, just like water finding its way down a mountainside. Your skin is basically a living map. When you're young, it's thick with collagen. That's the protein that keeps everything bouncy and smooth. Think of collagen as tiny springs holding up a mattress. Over time, these springs naturally relax. Not break, mind you. They just get softer. The fascinating part? Your face muscles create the same expressions thousands of times. Every smile carves a gentle groove. Every squint from sunny days adds character around your eyes. It's like a sculptor working incredibly slowly, creating something uniquely you. Scientists call them expression lines, for good reason. The deepest wrinkles appear where you felt the most. Laugh lines around your eyes mean you found joy. Forehead creases show you've been thinking hard about life. Even worry lines represent all the people and things you've cared enough to fret about. The Japanese have a beautiful concept called mono no aware, finding beauty in impermanence. Your wrinkles are proof you've lived fully. But here's something even more comforting about how our bodies change alongside nature's oldest living companions. You know what's fascinating? Trees and humans age in remarkably similar ways. Both start flexible and bendy, then gradually develop character lines and sturdy frameworks. An oak tree adds one ring each year. Just like we accumulate wisdom and experience, those rings tell stories of drought years, abundant seasons, and everything in between. Our bodies do something similar, building layers of knowledge in our minds and marking time in gentle ways. Both trees and people slow down their growth as they mature. A young sapling shoots up frantically, much like teenagers who seem to grow overnight. But mature trees focus their energy differently. They develop deeper root systems and stronger branches. Sound familiar? The most comforting part? Neither trees nor humans are meant to stay young forever. A mighty oak doesn't mourn its sapling days. Instead, it provides shade, supports wildlife, and offers shelter. Older trees actually become more valuable to their ecosystem over time. Trees also get those beautiful gnarled branches and textured bark that tell stories of survival. They wear their age with dignity, becoming landmarks that younger trees look up to, literally. Even the way both species handle seasons changes with maturity. Young trees might struggle through their first harsh winter, while ancient oaks have learned to rest peacefully during cold months. But here's something interesting about how our sleep patterns mirror this seasonal wisdom. Your metabolism slowing down isn't your body giving up on you. It's actually getting smarter. While everyone panics about burning fewer calories, your body is quietly becoming a master of efficiency. Like a luxury car that's learned to cruise instead of race, you're conserving energy for what actually matters. And honestly, that's brilliant. A 20-year-old burns through energy like they're running a bonfire, constantly, inefficiently. Their metabolism is basically shouting more fuel every few hours like an impatient toddler. But your aging metabolism, it's learned the art of mindful consumption. Your cells have figured out how to do more with less. They've become energy accountants, carefully budgeting every calorie for maximum impact. Instead of wasting energy on frantic cellular repairs and growth spurts, your body redirects that power toward maintaining what you've already built. Here's what nobody tells you about slower metabolism. Rest becomes genuinely restorative. When you sleep now, your body isn't frantically trying to grow and rebuild everything at once. It's doing focused, quality maintenance work. Like having a skilled craftsman fix your house instead of a hurried construction crew. Your afternoon nap isn't laziness, it's strategic energy management. Your body has learned that a 20-minute rest can be worth hours of pushing through fatigue. But speaking of rest and restoration, ancient cultures understood something fascinating about the silver transformation happening right on top of your head. Throughout history, silver hair has been anything but ordinary. Ancient Romans believed gray strands contained actual stardust from the gods. Wild, right? But they weren't the only ones who saw magic in those shimmering locks. In traditional Chinese culture, white hair symbolized the accumulation of celestial wisdom. Elders were literally walking libraries of experience, their silver crowns marking them as vessels of divine knowledge. Japanese folklore tells of the Shirogami, white-haired spirits who possess the secrets of the universe. The transformation itself is pretty remarkable. Your hair doesn't just turn gray overnight like some cartoon character getting scared. Instead, melanocytes, the cells that produce pigment, gradually slow down their work. Think of them as tiny painters who've earned the right to take longer coffee breaks. They're still creating color, just at a more leisurely pace. Celtic druids considered silver hair a mark of spiritual authority. Vikings respected gray-bearded warriors above all others. Even today, many African cultures view premature graying as a blessing, believing those individuals carry ancestral wisdom in their follicles. The beautiful irony. While modern society often fights this natural progression, our ancestors celebrated it as a crown of honor. Your changing hair color isn't aging, it's upgrading to premium status. Speaking of natural transformations that bring unexpected peace, let's explore how your sleep patterns are also evolving in wonderful ways. Sleep doesn't betray you as you age, it evolves. Like a master chef refining a recipe, your body gradually perfects the art of rest. Earlier bedtimes aren't surrender. They're wisdom disguised as biology. Most people fight this shift. They mourn their college days of staying up until 3 a.m. watching terrible movies. But here's what they're missing. Your circadian rhythm is getting smarter, not weaker. Research shows that older adults naturally produce melatonin earlier in the evening. Your brain literally starts preparing for sleep, while younger folks are still deciding what to binge watch. Those afternoon naps? Pure genius. Mediterranean cultures have known this for centuries. A 20-minute siesta isn't laziness. It's your nervous system hitting the reset button. Your body craves these power breaks because it's learned the secret of strategic rest. Sleep becomes lighter too, but that's not always bad news. You wake up more easily, sure. Yet you also cycle through dream phases more frequently. Think of it as getting multiple mini vacations for your mind each night instead of one long journey. The 9 p.m. bedtime that once seemed impossibly early now feels luxurious. There's something deliciously rebellious about being tucked in while the world rushes around outside. But why do our memories start editing themselves so selectively during these peaceful sleep cycles? Your brain has become a master editor, quietly curating your mental library while you sleep. It's like having the world's most thoughtful librarian working the night shift, deciding which memories deserve prime shelf space and which ones can fade into the background. The phenomenon is called positivity bias, and it gets stronger as we age. Your neural pathways literally rewire themselves to hold on to joy more tightly than pain. That embarrassing moment from 30 years ago? Your brain decided it wasn't worth the storage space. But that afternoon, when your child first laughed at your silly joke, filed under permanent collection. Well, turns out this isn't just wishful thinking. Researchers discovered that older adults show increased activity in brain regions associated with positive emotions when recalling memories. The anterior cingulate cortex, your brain's emotional processing center, becomes more selective about what it highlights. Makes sense, right? After decades of experience, your brain has learned what's actually worth remembering. It's not being dishonest, it's being wise. The beautiful irony is that people often worry about memory loss as they age, when really their brains are becoming expert curators of happiness. Every forgotten grocery list makes room for a remembered sunset. But here's what's even more fascinating about how our brains process time itself. Nature has some pretty amazing examples of what it means to age gracefully. Take the Galapagos tortoise. These gentle giants can live over 170 years. That's not just surviving, that's thriving through nearly 2 centuries of peaceful existence. Jonathan, the most famous of these ancient creatures, has been munching grass on the island of St. Helena since 1832. He's witnessed the invention of the telephone, both world wars and the moon landing. Yet he still wakes up each day, eats his breakfast, and takes his time getting around. No rushing, no stress, just steady, unhurried living. Then there's the bristlecone pine trees in California's White Mountains. Some have been growing for over 4,000 years. They've weathered countless storms, droughts, and harsh winters. Their secret? They grow slowly, conserve energy, and adapt to whatever comes their way. Sound familiar? What's beautiful about these ancient beings is their rhythm. They don't fight time, they dance with it. The tortoise doesn't apologize for moving slowly. The tree doesn't worry about its gnarled bark or twisted branches. They've learned what humans often discover later in life. There's profound wisdom in accepting your pace and wearing your years with quiet dignity. Speaking of wisdom, your own body keeps a fascinating record of everything you've experienced. Your body is basically a living history book, and it's been taking notes this whole time. Every broken bone, every laugh line, every callus on your hands tells a story that archaeologists would kill to read. The calcium deposits in your joints, those are like tree rings, marking years of walking, dancing, and maybe that unfortunate skateboarding phase you had at 35. Your bones actually remodel themselves constantly, replacing old tissue with new material about every 10 years. But here's what's fascinating. They keep a record of everything. That slight curve in your spine from years of gardening, that's your body's way of saying, remember all those beautiful tomatoes we grew. Even your teeth are tiny time capsules. Dentists can tell where you lived as a child just by looking at the minerals embedded in your enamel. It's like having a passport stamp from your kindergarten years permanently etched in your molars. The really beautiful part? Your cells carry memories too. That scar tissue isn't just random healing. It's engineered to be stronger than the original skin. Your body literally learns from every bump and scrape, becoming more resilient each time. Makes you appreciate those little aches differently, doesn't it? They're not just random pains. They're chapters in your personal archaeological record. But speaking of ancient wisdom, the Greeks had some pretty incredible thoughts about this whole aging process. The ancient Greeks had this whole thing figured out when it came to aging gracefully. While we're over here panicking about our first gray hair, Aristotle was writing about how maturity brings out the best in human character. He believed that young people were basically walking emotional hurricanes, but older folks, they'd learned the art of balance. The Stoics took it even further. Marcus Aurelius, who was literally running an empire while dealing with his own aging body, wrote that accepting life's seasons wasn't just wise, it was the secret to inner peace. These philosophers didn't see wrinkles as failures. They saw them as graduation certificates from the University of Experience. Socrates had this funny way of looking at it too. He'd joke that youth was wasted on the young because they spent all their time worrying about things that didn't matter. Meanwhile, older people had finally figured out what was actually worth their energy. Pretty smart for a guy who lived over 2,000 years ago, right? The Greeks even had a concept called eudaimonia, basically meaning the good life comes from wisdom, not smooth skin. They understood something we're just rediscovering. That growing older isn't about losing anything. It's about finally knowing what you've gained. But there's something equally fascinating about how our taste buds change as we age. Your taste buds are having their own little midlife crisis. And honestly, it's kind of endearing. Around 50, you start losing some of those tiny flavor detectors on your tongue. But here's what nobody tells you. This isn't your body giving up. It's editing. Think about it like this. When you were 20, you could taste every single ingredient in a complex dish. Overwhelming, right? Now your palate is becoming more diplomatic. It's choosing what deserves attention. My grandmother used to say her coffee tasted better at 70 than it did at 30. Turns out, she wasn't just being nostalgic. When you have fewer taste buds competing for attention, the ones that remain work harder. They're like the last employees at a closing restaurant, suddenly very dedicated to their job. The flavors you do taste become more meaningful. That simple piece of toast with butter, it's not just breakfast anymore. It's comfort distilled into its purest form. Your brain also starts connecting taste more directly to memory. Food becomes less about complexity and more about emotion. Makes sense, right? There's something beautifully zen about this transition. You're not losing your ability to enjoy food. You're gaining the ability to find satisfaction in simplicity. But wait until you hear how your skin is writing its own autobiography. Your skin has been keeping a diary this whole time, and honestly, it's got quite the story to tell. Every freckle marks a summer afternoon. Each line around your eyes maps decades of genuine laughter. Those deeper creases, they're evidence you've lived through weather, worry, and wonderful moments. But here's what nobody tells you about aging skin. It actually gets smarter about taking care of itself. While younger skin produces oil like it's running a 24/7 factory, mature skin learns the art of conservation. It holds onto moisture more thoughtfully. Makes sense, right? The texture changes too, becoming softer in unexpected ways. Think of it like a favorite sweater that gets more comfortable with every wash. Sure, it might not look fresh off the rack anymore, but it feels like home. Then there's the fascinating part about sunspots and age marks. They're not flaws. They're proof you didn't spend your entire life hiding indoors. Each one represents a day you chose to live outside, to garden, to walk, to exist under an actual sky instead of fluorescent lights. Your skin's natural oils shift toward creating a protective barrier that works differently, but often better than youthful skin. It's learned patience. Speaking of patience, wait until you discover how the animal kingdom handles the wisdom of age. Elephants have figured out something humans are just starting to understand. The oldest female leads the herd, and she's not there for decoration. When drought hits and water sources dry up, it's Grandma Elephant who remembers where to find hidden springs from decades past. Her wrinkled trunk and weathered tusks carry the GPS coordinates for survival. Orcas do the same thing. Post-menopausal grandmother whales become the navigators for their pods. They live 20 to 30 years beyond their reproductive years, which puzzled researchers for ages. Why would nature design females to outlive their baby-making days? Turns out, grandma orcas know which salmon runs will be most abundant and guide their families to the best feeding grounds. Wolf packs follow this pattern too. The alpha female isn't always the youngest or strongest. Often, she's the one with silver in her coat and scars from countless hunts. Her experience trumps raw energy every single time. Even among baboons, the eldest females serve as conflict mediators. They break up fights with a look and settle disputes with wisdom that only comes from watching the same drama play out for decades. Makes sense, right? But here's what's fascinating about human aging compared to these wise matriarchs. When you're young, minutes crawl by in math class, and summer vacation feels like an eternity. But here's something magical that happens as we age. Time becomes this luxurious flowing river instead of a rushing waterfall. Your brain literally changes how it processes time. Scientists have found that older adults develop what they call temporal flexibility. Basically, you stop being enslaved by the clock's tyranny. That frantic need to rush everywhere, it just dissolves. I remember my grandmother always arriving 30 minutes early to everything. Used to drive me crazy. Now I realize she'd discovered time's secret. When you're not constantly checking your phone or racing to the next thing, moments expand like warm honey. Here's the beautiful part. Your brain starts filtering out the urgent but unimportant stuff. That email can wait. The grocery store will still be there in an hour. You begin moving at what researchers call intentional pace. Not slow, just deliberate. Ever notice how elderly couples walk? They're not dawdling. They're savoring. Each step becomes conscious instead of automatic. The Japanese have a concept called ikigai, finding purpose in unhurried living. Turns out, your aging brain naturally gravitates toward this wisdom without any special training. But what happens when this beautiful slowness meets your changing sleep patterns? Throughout history, our ancestors discovered remedies that modern research now confirms actually work. Take turmeric, for instance. Grandmothers in India have been mixing it into warm milk for centuries to ease joint pain. Turns out they were onto something big. Turmeric contains curcumin, which reduces inflammation better than some prescription medications. Then there's the Mediterranean habit of sipping olive oil. Sounds weird, right? But people in Greece and Italy have been doing this for generations, and they consistently live longer than most of us. The oil contains compounds that protect your brain and heart like tiny bodyguards. Green tea ceremonies aren't just pretty rituals either. Japanese elders figured out that this simple leaf keeps their minds sharp and their skin looking younger. The antioxidants in green tea literally slow down cellular aging. Who knew something so simple could be so powerful? But here's my favorite ancient trick. Ginger for everything. My grandmother swore by ginger tea for upset stomachs, and she was absolutely right. Modern studies show ginger reduces inflammation, eases nausea, and even helps with arthritis pain. The best part? These remedies are gentle. No harsh side effects or complicated instructions. Just simple, time-tested approaches that have helped millions of people age gracefully. Speaking of graceful aging, there's something fascinating happening inside your personality as you get older. One of the most comforting discoveries about aging? You actually become more yourself. Not less. More. Think about teenagers trying on different personalities like ill-fitting clothes, They're constantly shape-shifting, desperately seeking approval from anyone within earshot. Exhausting, right? Well, your brain has been taking notes all these years, quietly figuring out who you really are beneath all that social costume jewelry. Research shows personality traits crystallize beautifully as we age. The aspects of yourself that felt uncertain or borrowed from others gradually fall away like autumn leaves. What remains is authentically, undeniably you. It's like your inner self finally gets to drive the car instead of being a nervous passenger. The relief is extraordinary. Remember caring what strangers thought about your outfit, your laugh, your opinions? That anxiety fades naturally, replaced by something psychologists call emotional authenticity. You stop performing and start being. Your genuine preferences emerge clearly. Maybe you've always pretended to enjoy loud parties when you preferred quiet conversations, or forced yourself to like spicy food when mild flavors brought you joy. These pretenses become unnecessary baggage you're finally free to unpack. The beautiful irony? Other people find this authentic version of you more appealing than any manufactured personality you wore in younger years. But there's something even more fascinating happening to your voice as you age. Your voice is literally aging like a fine wine, and there's actual science behind why that happens. Those vocal cords of yours, they're getting thicker and more relaxed over time, just like guitar strings that have been played for decades. When you hit your 20s, your voice box pretty much finished its teenage rebellion. But aging doesn't stop there. The muscles around your larynx start to chill out a bit. Less tension means deeper, richer tones. Ever notice how Morgan Freeman sounds like he could narrate your grocery list and make it profound? That's decades of vocal maturation right there. Women's voices typically drop about 2 notes lower by their 60s. Men's voices, they actually get slightly higher after 70, but gain this amazing gravelly character that screams wisdom. It's like your throat is adding seasoning to every word. The really cool part is how your speaking patterns change too. You start using fewer filler words like and Your brain has figured out that pauses are perfectly fine, actually powerful. You've earned the right to think before speaking, and it shows in how deliberately you choose words. That slight raspiness some older voices develop, that's not damage, that's character. Your voice is collecting stories, humor, and hard-earned wisdom with every passing year. Speaking of things that get better with age, wait until you discover what happens to your daily routines. Daily routines get a bad reputation for being boring. But here's what nobody tells you about aging. Those same patterns everyone calls mundane become your secret weapon for inner peace. Your morning coffee ritual. That's meditation disguised as caffeine addiction. The way you fold laundry becomes a moving prayer. Even checking the mail transforms into a gentle adventure. Think about it. When you're 20, routine feels like a prison. When you're 70, it feels like coming home. The brain actually craves predictability more as we age. Not because we're becoming boring, because we're getting smarter. Your nervous system has finally figured out that chaos is overrated. There's real comfort in knowing exactly how your Tuesday will unfold. Wake up, stretch those creaky joints, feed the cat who's probably judging your pajama choices. Simple? Absolutely. Peaceful? You bet. Scientists call this cognitive load reduction. I call it finally having your life figured out. Why stress about what to do next when you've created a beautiful rhythm that actually works? The Zen masters spent decades learning what aging teaches naturally. That repetition isn't boring, it's sacred. Your daily patterns become a kind of prayer, each familiar action a step toward serenity. But here's something fascinating. Ancient cultures discovered longevity secrets hidden in the simplest daily practices. The island of Sardinia holds secrets that make pharmaceutical companies jealous. Their centenarians don't just reach 100, they sprint past it like it's a warm-up lap. What's their secret weapon? Absolutely nothing fancy. These long-living legends swear by walking uphill daily. Not jogging, not CrossFit, just good old-fashioned hill climbing. Their legs stay strong, their hearts stay happy, and their knees somehow survive decades of this gentle torture. The Sardinians also nap without guilt, which honestly sounds like the best medical advice ever invented. Then there's Okinawa, where 90-year-olds garden like they're training for the Olympics. They practice something called hara hachibu, eating until you're 80% full. Imagine stopping before you're stuffed. Revolutionary stuff, right? The Nicoyans in Costa Rica have perfected the art of never retiring. They work well into their 90s, but here's the twist. They love what they do. No stress, no rushing, just purposeful activity that keeps their minds sharp and their spirits bright. All these cultures share one beautiful truth. They move naturally, eat simply, and stay connected to their communities. No expensive supplements, no miracle cures, just the kind of wisdom your great-grandmother would have approved of. But what happens when our minds start playing tricks with memory? Your brain has been quietly editing your life story for decades, and honestly, it's doing you a massive favor. While you sleep, your mind works like a gentle librarian, carefully deciding which memories deserve premium shelf space and which ones can be quietly moved to storage. The embarrassing thing you said 15 years ago? Gone. That awkward moment from middle school? Deleted. But your grandmother's laugh? Crystal clear. This isn't memory failure. It's memory wisdom. Research shows that as we age, our brains become increasingly selective about what they keep. We naturally forget the trivial stuff while holding on to what actually matters. It's like having a personal assistant who knows exactly which emails to trash and which ones to flag as important. The brain literally rewires itself to prioritize emotional significance over random details. Remember every grocery list from the past decade? Nope. Remember the feeling of your child's first laugh? Absolutely. This selective forgetting also protects us from carrying grudges. That argument with your neighbor becomes fuzzy, but the peaceful morning, coffees remain vivid. Your mind is essentially Marie Kondo, in your memories, keeping only what sparks joy. The beauty is that this process accelerates with age, creating natural emotional armor. Past worries lose their sting, while meaningful moments gain clarity. Speaking of clarity, there's something equally fascinating about how our relationships transform as we grow older. Your body runs on the same ancient clock as maple trees and migrating birds. Sounds wild, but it's true. As we age, something fascinating happens. We become more sensitive to seasonal changes, almost like we're tuning into nature's FM station more clearly. Your sleep patterns shift with daylight hours. Your appetite follows harvest rhythms. Even your mood swings gently with the seasons. Winter makes you crave hearty soups and afternoon naps. Spring brings that familiar urge to clean house and start fresh projects. Summer has you staying up later, feeling more social. Fall whispers, slow down, gather close, prepare for rest. This isn't just poetic nonsense. Your body produces different hormone levels throughout the year. Melatonin peaks in winter darkness. Vitamin D surges during summer sunshine. Your metabolism actually speeds up in cold months to keep you warm, then mellows out when temperatures rise. Indigenous cultures knew this instinctively. They planned their entire lives around seasonal wisdom. Rest in winter, plant in spring, celebrate in summer, harvest in fall. The beautiful part? Older bodies respect these rhythms more than younger ones. You stop fighting the natural urge to hibernate in January or stay up late watching fireflies in July. Your internal compass finally points true north. But here's something even more comforting about growing older. Friendship gets weird as you age, and thank goodness for that. When you're young, you collect friends like trading cards. The more, the better, right? Your phone buzzes constantly with group chats about where to meet and what to do. But here's what happens after 50. Your friend list starts shrinking, and it feels amazing. You realize you don't need 30 acquaintances when you have 3 people who actually know your middle name and remember your birthday without Facebook reminders. The relationships that survive become incredibly strong. Like trees growing together in a forest, long-time friendships develop intertwined root systems. You can sit in comfortable silence for an hour, or pick up conversations from 6 months ago as if no time passed. Your bullshit detector also improves dramatically. You can spot fake friends from across a room now. Energy vampires who used to drain you? Gone. People who only called when they needed something? Deleted. The relief is extraordinary. Quality trumps quantity every single time. Those deep friendships become like favorite sweaters, soft, reliable, and perfectly broken in. You laugh harder at inside jokes that span decades. You finish each other's sentences because you've heard the same stories 100 times. And somehow, they still make you smile. Speaking of comfort, let's explore why your body naturally starts craving gentleness over intensity. Your body learns something remarkable as the years pass. Strength used to mean lifting heavier things, running faster, pushing harder. But flexibility, that becomes your secret weapon. Watch a young tree in a storm. It's rigid, strong, but when the wind gets fierce enough, snap. Now look at the old willow by the pond. It bends so far you think it might break, but it never does. The branches dance with the wind instead of fighting it. Your joints might creak a little more these days, but here's what nobody tells you. Your mind becomes incredibly flexible. You stop breaking when life pushes because you've learned the ancient art of bending. Remember being 20 and thinking there was only one right way to do everything? Now you know there are 17 different ways to solve the same problem, and 3 of them involve taking a nap first. Flexibility isn't about touching your toes anymore. It's about touching base with reality and rolling with whatever comes next. When your original plan falls apart, you don't. You just make a new plan. Maybe one that includes more snacks. The bamboo survives earthquakes while the mighty oak falls. There's wisdom in yielding that takes decades to understand. But speaking of things that bend without breaking, your capacity for genuine happiness actually increases with age. Your happiness levels are probably following a fascinating U-shaped curve right now, and you don't even know it. Researchers who tracked thousands of people across decades discovered something remarkable. Contentment naturally dips in middle age, then climbs steadily upward as we get older. The numbers tell an incredible story. People in their 70s and 80s consistently report higher life satisfaction than those in their 40s and 50s. It's like our brains come with a built-in happiness recovery system. But why does this happen? Well, turns out our expectations become more realistic with age. That promotion you didn't get at 40 doesn't sting anymore. The perfect house you couldn't afford? Your current cozy place feels just right now. There's also something called the socio-emotional selectivity theory. Basically, when we realize time is precious, we automatically focus on what truly matters. Less energy wasted on petty annoyances. More appreciation for simple pleasures. The relief of not caring what others think plays a huge part too. Remember how exhausting it was trying to impress everyone? That weight just lifts. Your brain literally rewires itself for contentment. The anterior cingulate cortex, your worry center, becomes less reactive over time. Meanwhile, areas responsible for emotional regulation strengthen. Speaking of the brain's remarkable adaptations, there's another change happening that might surprise you about how wisdom actually develops. Throughout history, civilizations have created beautiful symbols to honor the wisdom that comes with age. The owl, with its patient gaze and nocturnal wisdom, became Greece's symbol for aged knowledge. Pretty fitting for a bird that sits still and observes everything, right? Ancient Egyptians chose the ibis, a bird that grows more elegant with maturity. Its long, curved beak represented the accumulated experience of years spent learning. Celtic cultures revered the spiral, showing how wisdom circles back on itself, deeper each time. But here's what's fascinating. Nearly every culture independently develops similar symbols. The tortoise appears everywhere, from China to Native American traditions. Slow, steady, and impossibly wise. These creatures live for centuries, watching generations come and go with the patience of truly experienced beings. Japanese culture celebrates the crane, believing it gains wisdom with each year of its 1,000-year lifespan. The wrinkles around its eyes aren't flaws. They're badges of honor, marking decades of accumulated understanding. Even trees became symbols of elder wisdom. The gnarled oak, the ancient olive, the weathered redwood. Their rings tell stories of seasons survived, storms weathered, and quiet growth that happens when no one's watching. What's remarkable is how these symbols all share one trait. They get more beautiful with age, not despite it. Speaking of getting better with time, there's something equally beautiful about how we naturally learn to release what no longer serves us. There's something oddly liberating about watching a tree drop its leaves. No drama, no clinging desperately to summer. Just a quiet release when the time feels right. Your body learns the same gentle art as you age. Those perfectionist tendencies that once kept you awake at night, they start to feel less important. The need to control every outcome gradually softens into something more like acceptance. Research shows that older adults naturally develop what psychologists call selective optimization. Fancy words for a simple truth. You get better at focusing on what actually matters and letting go of what doesn't. It's like your brain finally gets tired of carrying around unnecessary baggage. The physical act of letting go changes too. Your grip literally loosens, not just from arthritis, but from wisdom. You stop holding on to grudges so tightly. Old arguments that once felt earth-shattering start to seem almost silly. Here's what's fascinating. Centenarians consistently report that their ability to not sweat the small stuff improved dramatically after age 60. They didn't learn this from books or therapy. Their minds just naturally started filtering out the noise. The Japanese have a beautiful concept called mono no aware, the gentle sadness of letting things pass. But here's the twist. This sadness isn't bitter. It's sweet, like watching your children grow up. Speaking of growing up, your eyes literally change how they see the world. Your eyes have been working for decades, quietly adjusting to the world around you like a camera that's learned every lighting condition imaginable. Well, here's something fascinating. They're still learning new tricks. The lens in your eye naturally becomes less flexible over time. Sounds concerning? Actually, it's quite brilliant. This change forces you to hold books a little farther away, which naturally slows down your reading pace. And slower reading means better comprehension and deeper thinking. But the real magic happens with your visual priorities. Younger eyes dart everywhere, overwhelmed by visual noise. Your experienced eyes have developed something called selective visual attention. Translation? You automatically filter out the unimportant stuff and focus on what actually matters. Then there's the color perception shift. Many people notice they prefer softer, warmer tones as they age. This isn't a flaw. It's your brain choosing comfort over stimulation. Those harsh neon lights that once seemed normal, your eyes now recognize them as the visual assault they always were. Here's the beautiful part. You start noticing details that younger people miss entirely. The way afternoon light hits a wall, how shadows change throughout the day. Your eyes have become connoisseurs of subtlety. And speaking of subtle changes, wait until you discover how familiar scents start triggering the most wonderful memories. Remember how your grandmother's perfume could instantly transport you to her kitchen? That's your smell memory working its magic, and it becomes remarkably more powerful as you age. The olfactory system connects directly to your brain's memory center. No detours, no filtering. Just pure, emotional highway access. This is why a whiff of apple pie can make you feel 8 years old again, sitting at your mother's table. As we get older, our collection of scent memories becomes like a vintage wine cellar. Each fragrance has been carefully aged and preserved, gaining complexity and emotional depth. The smell of fresh rain might remind you of that camping trip from 30 years ago, complete with the feeling of adventure and the sound of your children's laughter. Your brain starts prioritizing these meaningful scent connections over creating new ones. It's not losing function. It's becoming a curator, like a museum director who knows which pieces deserve the best display cases. The funny thing about smell memory is how selective it becomes. You might forget where you put your keys, but catch a hint of Old Spice, and suddenly you're dancing with your father at your wedding again. This aromatherapy of aging happens naturally. Your nose becomes a time machine, offering instant access to comfort whenever you need it. But there's something equally fascinating about how different cultures have celebrated this sensory wisdom. Throughout history, cultures worldwide have turned growing older into something beautiful. The Japanese have a ceremony called kanreki, when someone turns 60, celebrating their return to the zodiac cycle of their birth. Red robes, red hats, even red underwear. It's like a rebirth party, where wisdom gets the spotlight it deserves. Ancient China had something even more elaborate. When people reached 70, entire communities would gather for elaborate feasts. The elders received special walking sticks, carved with dragons and phoenixes. These weren't just mobility aids. They were symbols of power and respect. Makes our modern birthday cards seem a bit underwhelming, doesn't it? But here's what really gets me excited about these traditions. They didn't see aging as decline. The Maasai people in Africa still practice ceremonies where elders transition into advisory roles. They become the keepers of stories, the resolvers of disputes, the holders of cultural memory. Even the Romans had it figured out. They believed your 60th birthday marked the beginning of your most influential years. Senators often didn't reach their peak until their 70s. The word Senate literally comes from senex, meaning old man. These celebrations weren't about consolation prizes for surviving. They were about recognizing that life's most valuable chapters often come later. Speaking of valuable chapters, the way our bodies literally move through time tells its own fascinating story. Your body knows something that fitness gurus often miss. Slower movement isn't about getting old. It's about getting wise. When you move deliberately, your brain activates different pathways than during rushed motion. Each step becomes a conversation between your mind and muscles. The hurried 20-year-old running to catch a bus? They're operating on autopilot. But someone who moves mindfully? They're conducting a symphony. Tai Chi masters figured this out centuries ago. Those flowing, graceful movements aren't just exercise. They're moving meditation. Every gesture has purpose. Every shift in weight tells a story. Here's what happens inside your body during deliberate movement. Your nervous system switches from stress mode to restoration mode. Your breathing naturally deepens. Blood pressure drops. Stress hormones take a vacation. Professional dancers understand this too. The most beautiful performances aren't the fastest ones. They're the ones where every movement has intention. Grace beats speed every single time. Even walking to the mailbox becomes different when you pay attention. Feel your feet touch the ground. Notice how your arms naturally swing. Appreciate the miracle of balance that keeps you upright. This isn't about moving like you're underwater. It's about moving like you matter. But speaking of places that understand the art of living well, certain regions around the world have cracked the code on longevity itself. Scattered across the globe are 5 mysterious regions where people routinely blow out 100 candles on their birthday cakes. Researchers call them blue zones. And honestly, they're like real-life fountain of youth locations. Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, Loma Linda, California. What do these places have in common? Their residents don't just live longer, they live better. Take Icaria, where afternoon naps aren't just accepted, they're practically mandatory. The island earned the nickname where people forget to die because dementia rates are almost non-existent. Their secret? Mountain tea, wild greens, and a culture that treats stress like an unwelcome dinner guest. Then there's Okinawa, where centenarians garden until they're 95. They have a concept called ikigai, your reason for being. No retirement homes needed when you've got purpose keeping you spry. The fascinating part isn't their genetics, it's their environment. These communities share something profound. Strong social connections, natural movement built into daily life, and diets rich in plants. They don't hit gyms or count calories. They just live in harmony with their surroundings. Geography shapes aging in ways we're only beginning to understand. Speaking of understanding, wait until you discover how your body develops its own patient teaching methods. Your body becomes a surprisingly patient teacher as the decades pass. When you're 20 and twist your ankle, you expect to be sprinting again within days. But at 60, your body gently suggests you might want to sit this one out for a while. Here's what's fascinating, though. This isn't your body giving up on you. It's actually gotten smarter about the whole healing business. Young bodies heal fast, but often sloppy, like a contractor rushing to meet a deadline. Older bodies take their sweet time, but they do the job right. Your immune system becomes more selective too. Instead of throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, it's learned which battles are worth fighting. That's why some older folks bounce back from illnesses that would floor younger people for weeks. The real magic happens in how rest transforms from punishment to prescription. Remember when being told to take it easy felt like torture? Now it sounds like luxury. Your body has trained you to appreciate the art of doing absolutely nothing. Sleep becomes restorative in ways that would make spa owners jealous. 8 hours of quality rest can work miracles that no expensive cream ever could. But here's where aging gets really interesting. The objects around you start holding entirely different meanings. Your grandmother's china cabinet isn't just furniture. It's an archaeological dig waiting to happen. That teacup with the tiny chip. It survived your cousin's wedding reception in 1987. The wooden spoon with the worn handle bears the fingerprints of 1,000 Sunday gravies. Each scratch, stain, and gentle wear mark tells a story that no museum could ever capture. Well, here's something fascinating. Objects literally absorb the oils from our skin over decades. That favorite armchair isn't just comfortable because of its cushions. The fabric holds microscopic traces of every afternoon nap, every late-night reading session, every quiet moment of contemplation. Your coffee mug knows you better than most people do. The slight discoloration on one side shows exactly where your thumb rests. The faded logo reveals how many dishwasher cycles it survived. Makes sense, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. Research shows that elderly people form deeper emotional connections to objects than younger folks do. That lamp isn't just providing light anymore. It's the witness to decades of family dinners, homework sessions, and quiet conversations. Your possessions become co-conspirators in your life story. They're the silent witnesses who remember when your hair was different colors, when your voice sounded younger. Speaking of voices, there's something remarkable about how they change. Throughout history, writers have found fascinating ways to describe growing older. Ancient Chinese texts compared aging to wine that improves with time. The Greeks wrote about elderhood as the season when wisdom finally blooms. But here's what's really cool. These weren't just pretty metaphors. The oldest known text about aging comes from ancient Egypt, written 4,000 years ago. It described old age as the time when the heart speaks loudest. Turns out, they were onto something. Modern research shows our emotional intelligence actually peaks in our 70s. Medieval manuscripts called wrinkles life's gentle geography. They saw each line as a map of experiences worth celebrating. One Persian poet wrote that gray hair was silver threads woven by time's kindest hands. The ancient Romans had a phrase that translates roughly to the beautiful burden of years. They understood something we're just rediscovering. Aging isn't about losing things. It's about gaining depth. Japanese literature speaks of mono no aware, the gentle sadness of things passing, but also their beauty because they pass. This isn't melancholy. It's appreciation for life's natural rhythm. Even Shakespeare, who wrote plenty about youth, called old age the crown of life. He knew that reaching advanced years meant you'd successfully navigated all of life's challenges. These ancient voices understood that growing older deserves celebration, not fear. Speaking of celebration, there's something remarkable about how different places around the world actually honor their elders. Growing older literally rewires your brain for kindness. Your neural pathways strengthen in areas linked to empathy and compassion. It's like your mind becomes a better person without you even trying. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes emotional understanding, actually grows more active with age. Meanwhile, the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, calms down. Less fear, more understanding. Pretty neat trade-off, right? This isn't just feel-good fluff. Researchers tracked thousands of people over decades and found something remarkable. Older adults consistently score higher on measures of empathy, forgiveness, and emotional generosity. They're literally becoming kinder humans. But here's what's fascinating. This kindness isn't weakness or resignation. It's wisdom in action. When you've lived through enough storms, you recognize them in other people's eyes. You've made mistakes, so you understand when others stumble. You've been hurt, so you know how precious gentleness really is. The brain also develops what scientists call socio-emotional selectivity. Basically, you stop wasting emotional energy on petty conflicts. Arguments that would have ruined your week at 30 barely register at 60. You save your feelings for what actually matters. Your mirror neurons, the cells that help you understand others' emotions, become more sophisticated too. They're like emotional translators that have gotten really good at their job. Speaking of getting better at things, there's something beautiful happening to how we simplify our lives as we age. Growing older is like having a personal assistant that quietly removes the unnecessary clutter from your life. Without you even noticing, your brain starts doing something remarkable. It begins to naturally filter out the stuff that doesn't really matter. Think about teenagers. They collect everything. Friends, activities, hobbies, drama, opinions about everything under the sun. It's exhausting just watching them. But as we age, something beautiful happens. We start letting go of the excess baggage. Your closet becomes proof of this transformation. Those 17 different styles of jeans? Now you have 3 pairs that actually fit well and feel comfortable. The collection of kitchen gadgets you never used? Gone. The books you kept just in case? Donated to someone who'll actually read them. This isn't laziness or giving up. It's wisdom in action. Your brain has spent decades learning what brings genuine happiness and what's just noise. Like a master curator in a museum, it keeps the masterpieces and quietly removes the rest. The Japanese have a word for this, dan shari, which means refusing, disposing, and separating from unnecessary things. Turns out, our minds naturally develop this skill around age 50. Well, speaking of natural changes that happen as we age, there's something even more interesting happening when you take those afternoon naps. Your afternoon nap isn't laziness. It's actually the most sophisticated sleep strategy on the planet. Scientists have discovered that splitting sleep into 2 phases mirrors our natural circadian rhythms perfectly. The Spanish figured this out centuries ago with their siesta tradition, and now research proves they were geniuses all along. Here's the fascinating part. Every mammal, except modern humans, takes multiple rest periods throughout the day. Lions sleep 20 hours daily in chunks. Dolphins literally sleep with half their brain at a time. We're the weird ones for trying to cram all our rest into one 8-hour block. Your body temperature naturally dips between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, creating what sleep researchers call the post-lunch lull. This isn't from eating too much. It happens even when you skip lunch entirely. Your brain is basically saying, hey, remember when humans were smart enough to rest during the hottest part of the day? The perfect nap lasts exactly 20 minutes. Any longer, and you risk sleep inertia. That groggy feeling when you wake up confused about what year it is. 20 minutes gives you all the benefits without the drowsiness. Think of it as a mini vacation for your neurons. But there's something even more elegant about how we naturally shift towards strategic rest as we age. The way our bodies embrace this wisdom tells an incredible story. Your relationship with comfort transforms dramatically as you age, and it's one of the most pleasant surprises of getting older. Remember when luxury meant expensive restaurants and flashy cars? Well, that changes. Research from Harvard shows people over 60 find more satisfaction in a perfectly brewed cup of tea than they did in elaborate dinners during their 20s. Makes sense, right? The shift happens gradually. Your taste buds become connoisseurs of simplicity. That morning coffee tastes richer when you're not rushing. The afternoon sun streaming through your window feels like a 5-star spa treatment. And honestly, it kind of is. But here's where it gets fascinating. Your brain literally rewires to appreciate these moments more deeply. The neural pathways that once craved stimulation and novelty start favoring familiarity and peace. It's like your mind finally learns the difference between excitement and contentment. I've noticed this in my own life. The blanket my grandmother knitted feels more luxurious than any designer throw I ever owned. There's something about objects with history that younger people just don't get yet. Your definition of wealth evolves too. Instead of counting possessions, you start counting quiet moments. A nap becomes as valuable as a vacation. And surprisingly, this shift towards simple pleasures doesn't feel like settling. It feels like finally understanding what actually matters. Then there's the ancient wisdom hidden in traditional foods. Traditional longevity recipes weren't just about living longer. They were about living better. And the fascinating part? Most of these time-tested foods are still sitting in your kitchen right now. Take turmeric, for instance. This golden spice has been used in Indian households for over 4,000 years. Not because ancient cooks knew about curcumin or inflammation markers, but because grandmothers noticed something remarkable. People who ate it regularly seemed to age with more grace and fewer aches. Then there's the Mediterranean obsession with olive oil. Greeks have been drizzling it on everything since before recorded history. Modern research confirms what they always knew. This liquid gold keeps hearts happy and minds sharp well into the 90s. But here's where it gets deliciously ironic. The most powerful longevity foods aren't exotic superfruits shipped from distant mountains. They're humble ingredients, like garlic, which Egyptian pyramid builders ate for strength. Or green tea, which Chinese monks sipped while contemplating eternity. Japanese centenarians swear by miso soup every morning. Not because it's trendy, but because fermented foods have been nurturing their gut bacteria for generations. The wisdom was always there, wrapped in simple daily rituals. These recipes carried something more than nutrients. They carried the comfort of belonging to something larger than ourselves. Speaking of comfort, there's another quiet revolution happening as we age that might surprise you. Growing older isn't just about slowing down, it's quietly rebellious. While the world keeps screaming about youth and speed, aging lets you flip the script entirely. Remember being 20 and desperately caring what everyone thought? That exhausting mental gymnastics of trying to please strangers at coffee shops. Well, here's some beautiful news. Research shows that concern about social judgment peaks in our 20s and steadily decreases as we age. By 60, most people give exactly zero attention to what random people think about their choices. This isn't apathy, it's liberation. Your grandmother wearing purple pants to the grocery store? That's not eccentric behavior. That's someone who's figured out life's biggest secret. Other people's opinions are surprisingly irrelevant to your happiness. She's staging a peaceful revolution against society's expectations, one comfortable shoe at a time. The really wonderful part? This freedom develops naturally. You don't have to work at it or practice affirmations. Your brain literally restructures itself to care less about judgment and more about authenticity. Scientists call it emotional regulation, but it feels more like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. That quiet confidence you see in older folks isn't resignation. It's the gentle rebellion of people who've discovered that being themselves is infinitely more comfortable than performing for others. But there's something even more fascinating happening inside those aging bodies. Your bones aren't just static scaffolding holding you up. They're living, breathing ecosystems that constantly rebuild themselves throughout your entire life. Think about it. Every 7 to 10 years, your skeleton completely replaces itself. That's right. The bones you have today aren't the same ones you had a decade ago. Just like coral reefs grow layer by layer in the ocean, your bones deposit new calcium and minerals while dissolving old material. This process, called bone remodeling, actually gets more sophisticated as you age. Your body becomes incredibly efficient at placing new bone exactly where you need strength most. Here's what's fascinating. Bones respond to stress by becoming stronger. Every step you take, every gentle movement, sends signals telling your skeleton where to reinforce itself. It's like having a construction crew that never sleeps, always improving the blueprint. Older bones develop what researchers call architectural wisdom. They might not be as dense as younger bones, but they're often better engineered. Your skeleton learns from decades of use, creating internal structures that distribute weight more cleverly than any human architect could design. The calcium in your bones comes from ancient sea creatures, making you literally connected to prehistoric oceans. Your femur bone is stronger than concrete, yet flexible enough to absorb impact without breaking. But there's something else your bones share with nature's most enduring structures. There's something beautiful about reaching a point in life where enough stops feeling like settling and starts feeling like wisdom. Your younger self probably thought contentment meant giving up, but your aging brain knows better. The philosophy of enough isn't about having less. It's about recognizing abundance that was always there. When you've lived through decades of chasing more, faster, bigger, your mind naturally develops what researchers call satisficing, the art of being satisfied with what's sufficient. Think about it this way. A 20-year-old sees a sunset and thinks about Instagram. A 70-year-old sees a sunset and feels complete. Same sunset, different appreciation software running upstairs. But here's where it gets fascinating. Studies show that people over 60 report higher life satisfaction than those in their 30s and 40s, despite having less physical energy and often fewer resources. The secret? They've mastered the gentle art of enough. Your brain literally rewires itself to find contentment more easily. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes satisfaction, becomes more active with age. Meanwhile, the areas responsible for social comparison and future anxiety calm down. Nature's way of saying, you've earned some peace. This isn't resignation, it's graduation. You've learned that happiness isn't a destination you missed. It's been riding shotgun the whole time. Speaking of wisdom, your body develops. Wait until you discover what happens to your attention span. Every culture on earth has dreamed of staying young forever. The ancient Greeks told tales of ambrosia, the food of the gods that granted eternal youth. Babylonians searched for magical herbs. Chinese alchemists spent centuries mixing potions that promised to stop time itself. But here's what's fascinating about these stories. They weren't really about youth at all. When archaeologists studied these myths deeper, they found something unexpected. Most Fountain of Youth tales actually described wisdom, not physical appearance. The eternal youth these stories promised was mental clarity, emotional peace, and spiritual understanding. Makes sense, right? Ancient Egyptians believed their pharaohs gained divine wisdom as they aged. The older the ruler, the closer to godhood they became. Aging wasn't something to fight. It was literally considered a divine transformation. Even more surprising, many cultures viewed wrinkles as sacred markings. Native American tribes saw them as maps showing where wisdom lived on your face. Each line told a story of lessons learned. The Roman poet Cicero wrote that trying to stay young forever was like trying to hold on to childhood toys as an adult. He argued the real magic happened when you embraced each life stage fully. These ancient stories reveal something profound about our relationship with aging. Maybe they understood something we're just rediscovering. Speaking of rediscovering ancient wisdom, our ears actually develop their own fascinating relationship with time. Your ears become surprisingly picky as you age. And honestly, that's fantastic news. While younger folks complain about missing conversations in noisy restaurants, your brain is actually performing an incredible filtering trick. Those damaged hair cells in your inner ear aren't just randomly failing. They're becoming selective critics. The high-frequency sounds that disappear first are usually the most annoying ones anyway. Microwave beeps, phone notifications, that awful screech of car brakes. Your hearing naturally tunes out the sonic clutter that modern life throws at you. But here's what nobody tells you about this change. Your brain compensates by becoming a master at reading context and body language. You might miss some words, but you're picking up emotional nuances that younger people completely overlook. Audiologists call this selective presbycusis, but I prefer thinking of it as developing audio wisdom. Your ears have heard enough nonsense for several lifetimes. They're simply choosing quality over quantity. Many older adults report that meaningful conversations actually feel richer and more intimate. When you have to lean in closer to hear someone speak, you're naturally creating a more personal connection. The cocktail party effect, where you can focus on one voice among many, becomes even more pronounced with age. Your brain learns to zero in on what truly matters while letting background chatter fade away. Speaking of what matters, There's something equally beautiful about how we learn to protect our emotional energy as we grow older. Learning to say no becomes surprisingly graceful as you age. What once felt awkward or guilt-inducing transforms into an art form of gentle protection. Your energy becomes more precious with time, not because you have less of it, but because you finally understand its true value. Like a master gardener who knows exactly which plants deserve water and which need pruning, you develop an intuitive sense of what deserves your attention. The beautiful thing, people actually respect boundaries more when they're delivered with the quiet confidence that comes from experience. There's no stammering or over-explaining. Just a calm, kind, "that doesn't work for me right now." Research shows that older adults report feeling less guilty about declining requests. Your brain literally develops better emotional regulation, making it easier to distinguish between genuine obligations and unnecessary pressure. It's like having a built-in spam filter for life's demands. The magic happens when you realize that saying no to one thing means saying yes to something better. Maybe that's a peaceful evening at home, quality time with loved ones, or simply the luxury of not being overwhelmed. Your boundaries become less like walls and more like thoughtfully placed garden gates. They're not meant to keep everything out, just to ensure that what comes in enhances rather than depletes your well-being. Speaking of what enhances life, physical connection takes on entirely new meaning as we age. Touch becomes something almost sacred as we get older. While younger people might casually bump into each other or give quick high fives, older adults treat physical connection like fine wine. Every hug, handshake, and gentle pat on the shoulder carries more weight. The skin actually becomes more sensitive to gentle pressure over time. Not more painful, but more aware. It's like your body develops a better appreciation system for comfort. That's why grandparents give the best hugs. They're not rushing through them. Physical therapists have noticed something fascinating. Older patients respond better to gentle touch therapy than aggressive manipulation. The body literally prefers kindness. Your nervous system learns to value quality over intensity. Then there's the emotional side. When you've lived long enough to lose people you love, every embrace with those who remain feels precious. You don't take a spouse's hand for granted after 50 years together. You hold it like treasure. Even simple touches become therapeutic. A gentle massage, soft fabric against skin, or warm water in a bath. These sensations that younger people might barely notice become small luxuries. Your hands become storytellers too. They've touched so much life, held babies, comforted friends, created things. Each touch carries that history. But what happens when our movement itself becomes meditation? There's something deeply calming about watching someone knit. Row after row, stitch after stitch. The same motion repeated thousands of times until a sweater emerges. That's basically what happens to your brain as you age. Repeated actions become automatic highways in your mind. Your morning coffee ritual. That's not just habit anymore. It's meditation disguised as routine. The way you fold laundry, water plants, or arrange books becomes almost sacred. Research shows that repetitive movements actually lower cortisol levels. That's your stress hormone taking a permanent vacation. When you've buttered toast the same way for 40 years, your nervous system goes into a zen-like state. No decisions required. Just peaceful, practiced motion. My grandmother could shell peas while having deep conversations. Her hands moved independently, like they had their own consciousness. Turns out, she was accidentally practicing mindfulness every single time. The beauty lies in how these repeated actions become completely effortless. Your body knows exactly what to do. There's no mental energy wasted on figuring out the steps. It's pure flow state, happening naturally in your kitchen, garden, or wherever your rituals live. Even simple things like stirring soup become meditative. The circular motion, the gentle bubbling, the familiar scent rising. But what happens when your relationship with food itself starts shifting in unexpected ways? Ancient cultures understood something we're just rediscovering. They didn't see aging as decline, but as entering life's most meaningful season. The Chinese called it the autumn of wisdom, when leaves turn golden before their graceful release. Celtic traditions spoke of life's 4 seasons, matching the year's rhythm. Spring brought learning. Summer was for building. Autumn for harvesting wisdom. And winter for peaceful reflection. Makes sense, right? Each phase had its own beauty and purpose. The Hindu concept of ashrama divided life into 4 stages, with the final 2 focused entirely on spiritual growth and inner peace. They believed your 60s and beyond were when you finally got to drop all the social performance and just be yourself. Talk about a retirement plan. Japanese culture has a beautiful word, mono no aware. It means finding beauty in life's fleeting nature, including our own aging. They see wrinkles like cherry blossom petals, temporary, precious, worth celebrating precisely because they don't last forever. Indigenous wisdom traditions worldwide viewed elders as living libraries. Their aging wasn't loss, but accumulation of stories, understanding, and hard-earned peace. The Inuit have 17 different words for types of wisdom that only come with age. These cultures knew what we're learning. Life's seasons aren't about endings, but there's something even more fascinating about how our bodies mirror these ancient rhythms. Your body operates like an ancient tree, growing deeper roots with every passing year. Well, that's not just poetry. It's actually happening. As you age, your attachment to familiar places becomes stronger than superglue on a hot day. Scientists studying this phenomenon discovered something fascinating. The brain develops what researchers call place attachment networks that strengthen over decades. These neural pathways literally anchor you to environments where you feel safe and comfortable. Your favorite chair? That corner of the garden? They're not just preferences anymore. They're neurological necessities. But here's where it gets really interesting. Unlike younger people, who crave constant change and new experiences, aging brains find genuine peace in familiar surroundings. The scent of your kitchen, the creak of specific floorboards, even the way afternoon light hits your living room window. These become sources of deep comfort rather than boring routine. This isn't about being stuck or resistant to change. It's about wisdom. Your brain has finally figured out what environments make you feel most yourself. Like a wise old oak that's weathered countless storms, you've learned where your roots grow strongest. The most remarkable part, this settling isn't limiting, it's liberating. When you stop searching for the perfect place, you start creating it wherever you are. Speaking of creating comfort, there's something equally beautiful about how waiting itself transforms. Remember being a kid and waiting felt like torture? 5 minutes until recess stretched into eternity. Christmas morning seemed years away when December first hit the calendar. Well, something magical happens as we age. Patience stops being this impossible skill we have to force ourselves into. It just arrives, like a gentle friend who finally learned when to show up. Your nervous system literally rewires itself for this. The stress hormones that used to spike when things took longer than expected, they calm down. The part of your brain that screams, "I need it now," learns to whisper, "It'll come when it comes." Think about how differently you handle waiting now compared to your 20s. Traffic jams become moments to notice the sky. Long lines turn into people-watching opportunities. Even waiting for test results feels less like psychological warfare. There's actual brain chemistry behind this shift. Older brains produce different levels of neurotransmitters that regulate impatience. The fight-or-flight response becomes more like a gentle nudge or nap response. Plus, you've seen enough delayed gratification pay off by now. That job that took months to land, the relationship that bloomed slowly, the garden that needed seasons to mature. Your body teaches you that rushing rarely improves outcomes. But there's another fascinating change happening to how you experience humor itself. Remember when you were young and took everything so seriously? Your face would scrunch up in concentration. Your jaw would clench during stressful moments, and dramatic sighs were practically your signature move. Well, here's some delightful news about aging. Laughter literally gets easier. Your sense of humor undergoes a fascinating transformation as you age. Those sharp, sarcastic quips that once felt so important, they soften into gentle chuckles. The need to be the funniest person in the room, it melts away like ice cream on a summer day. Research shows that older adults laugh more frequently, but with less intensity. Instead of those belly-aching, tear-streaming moments, you develop what scientists call micro-amusements. These are those soft chuckles that bubble up when you notice life's gentle ironies. Like finding your glasses on your head after searching for 20 minutes. Classic. The humor itself evolves too. Puns become genuinely funny instead of groan-worthy. Dad jokes? Pure comedy gold. You start appreciating wordplay that would have made your younger self roll their eyes so hard they'd risk injury. There's something beautifully freeing about finding everything slightly amusing rather than earth-shatteringly hilarious. Your laughing muscles get a workout without the exhaustion. But what about those traditional practices that cultures worldwide have used to embrace this gentler approach to aging gracefully? Throughout history, our ancestors discovered something remarkable about growing older. They didn't fight it. They embraced it with rituals that would make modern wellness gurus jealous. Take the ancient Chinese practice of morning pages. No, not journaling. Elderly practitioners would spend dawn hours slowly writing the same calming characters over and over. The repetitive brush strokes became meditation in motion. Their hands might shake a bit, but that just added character to the ink. Japanese elders perfected the art of forest bathing, basically hanging out with trees without any agenda. Sound simple? Well, it drops cortisol levels faster than most medications. The Japanese figured this out when smartphones were still centuries away from ruining everything. Then there's the Mediterranean tradition of the evening stroll. Not power walking or hitting step goals. Just wandering around the neighborhood, chatting with whoever crosses your path. Italian nonnas turned gossip into longevity science without even realizing it. Ancient Indian Ayurveda recommended oil massages for aging joints. Warm sesame oil, gentle circular motions, and zero rush to finish. Makes sense, right? Your body spent decades taking care of everyone else. Maybe it deserves some pampering. But here's what's fascinating about memory itself. Your brain actually becomes incredibly selective about what it chooses to remember as you age. Your brain operates like the world's most sophisticated librarian, quietly deciding which memories deserve premium shelf space and which ones can fade into the background. This selective process isn't random. It's actually protecting your peace of mind in ways that would make any therapist jealous. Researchers have discovered something remarkable about how we store experiences. Happy memories get strengthened neural pathways, while painful ones gradually lose their emotional punch. It's like your brain has a built-in photo editor, automatically enhancing the good shots while softening the harsh lighting on the bad ones. Think about your childhood summers. You probably remember endless sunny days, laughter, and ice cream. But you've likely forgotten most of the mosquito bites, sunburns, and sibling fights. That's not nostalgia. That's neuroscience working overtime to keep you mentally healthy. The technical term is positivity bias. But honestly, that sounds way too clinical for something so beautifully human. Your aging brain literally rewrites your personal history to emphasize joy. Those embarrassing moments that kept you awake at 20, they're probably collecting dust in some forgotten mental corner by now. Well, there's another fascinating aspect to consider. While your brain curates memories, your body learns something equally comforting about movement itself. Getting older doesn't mean becoming clumsy. Actually, something magical happens to movement as we age. Each step becomes more thoughtful, more deliberate, more dance-like. When you're 20, you rush everywhere. Running upstairs, speed walking through crowds, bouncing from task to task like a pinball. But there's something beautiful that happens when our bodies start asking us to slow down. Movement becomes intentional. Watch an elderly person walking through a garden. They're not just getting from point A to point B. They're experiencing each footfall, feeling the ground beneath them, noticing the rhythm of their own breathing. It's like they've discovered that walking can be meditation. The funny thing is, dancers often don't hit their emotional peak until later in life. Martha Graham was still choreographing revolutionary pieces in her 90s. Why? Because movement isn't just about athletic ability. It's about understanding your body's language. Your joints might creak a little more these days, but that just means you're learning to move with intention. Each gesture becomes more meaningful when you can't waste energy on unnecessary motion. It's efficiency turned into art. Even reaching for a coffee cup becomes graceful when you're not in a hurry. But speaking of grace, there's something equally beautiful about the way silence itself transforms with age. Ever notice how the most comfortable conversations happen without words? That's your brain getting better at reading people. After decades of human interaction, you've become a master decoder of facial expressions, body language, and those tiny pauses that speak volumes. Silent moments used to feel awkward when you were younger. Now, they're pure gold. Your nervous system has learned that not every gap in conversation needs filling. Sometimes the most profound connections happen in those quiet spaces between words. There's actually a biological reason for this shift. Your brain's interior cingulate cortex becomes more efficient at processing social cues as you age. Translation: you can sense what people are thinking without them saying a word. It's like developing emotional superpowers through practice. My grandmother could communicate entire conversations with just a raised eyebrow and a slight nod. Turns out she wasn't being mysterious. She was being efficient. When you've heard thousands of conversations, you realize most of what needs to be said doesn't require actual words. The Japanese have a term called kuki wo yomu, which means reading the air. Older adults excel at this invisible skill. They can walk into a room and immediately sense the mood, tensions, and unspoken dynamics at play. But here's something fascinating about how we choose our words more carefully as we age. Those extra teeth that showed up during your late teens weren't just nature playing a cruel joke on your mouth. Ancient cultures saw wisdom teeth as something far more meaningful than modern dentistry suggests. The timing fascinated our ancestors. Why would teeth arrive just as you're becoming an adult? Many believed these late bloomers represented the physical manifestation of growing wisdom. Your body was literally making room for the knowledge you'd accumulate. In some Pacific Island cultures, the emergence of wisdom teeth marked the transition from youth to elder in training. The pain? Well, that was just wisdom making space in your head. Makes sense when you think about it that way. But here's what's really interesting about these mysterious molars. They don't follow the same rules as your other teeth. They show up fashionably late, sometimes sideways, often causing drama. Sound familiar? That's exactly how real wisdom works too. Traditional Chinese medicine linked wisdom teeth to kidney energy and life force. The healthier your wisdom teeth, the stronger your foundation for aging gracefully. Even if yours got yanked out by some dentist wielding pliers, the message remains the same. Your mouth spent decades preparing space for something that might never fit properly. Yet somehow, your hair has been quietly preparing its own transformation, following an entirely different timeline that spans your whole life. Your hair has been keeping a diary your entire life, and now it's finally ready to tell its story. Those silver strands aren't signs of decline. They're certificates of experience, each one earned through years of living. The transformation happens because your hair follicles gradually produce less melanin, the pigment responsible for color. But here's what's fascinating. This isn't random destruction. It's actually your body's way of conserving energy for more essential functions. Think of it as biological efficiency at its finest. Those texture changes? Your hair becomes finer because individual strands get thinner. But many people find their hair also becomes softer and more manageable. It's like nature's way of saying, hey, let's make this easier for you. Different cultures have celebrated silver hair for centuries. In ancient Greece, gray hair was considered a crown of glory. Japanese tradition views it as a sign of wisdom and respect. Even today, people spend hundreds of dollars trying to achieve that perfect silver shade that you're developing naturally. The hormonal shifts that cause these changes also tend to make hair grow more slowly, which means fewer bad hair days and more time between haircuts. Your wallet will thank you. But the real magic happens when you start seeing these changes as your hair's graduation ceremony. Speaking of natural beauty transformations, wait until you discover what happens when your eyes begin to see the world differently. Ever notice how a sunset can stop you mid-sentence now? There's actually something beautiful happening in your brain that makes colors more vivid and meaningful as you age. Your visual processing changes in fascinating ways over the decades. The lens in your eye naturally yellows, which sounds terrible, but actually filters out harsh blue light. Think of it like wearing the world's most expensive amber sunglasses, but built right into your eyeballs. This creates warmer, richer tones. Those golden hour moments hit differently, because you're literally seeing them through a gentler filter. Plus, your pupils get smaller with age, which increases depth of field. Everything stays in focus longer, like having a professional camera setting permanently enabled. But here's what really gets interesting. Your brain develops what researchers call aesthetic expertise. Decades of looking at sunsets, faces, and landscapes create neural pathways that recognize beauty faster and deeper than younger eyes can manage. You're not just seeing a sunset anymore. You're seeing every sunset you've ever watched layered into one moment. Your visual cortex has become a connoisseur, picking up subtleties that used to slip right past. The patience that comes with age plays a role too. You actually watch longer, letting your eyes drink in details that younger folks rush past while checking their phones. Speaking of hands that have learned to slow down and savor moments, there's something deeply comforting about objects that show their age. Your favorite sweater with the perfectly placed holes. That wooden spoon your grandmother used for 50 years, its handle worn smooth by countless meals prepared with love. Philosophy has long celebrated the beauty of worn things. The Japanese call it wabi-sabi, finding perfection in imperfection. A chipped teacup tells stories that a pristine one never could. Those stories whisper of cozy mornings, important conversations, and moments that mattered enough to leave their mark. Your hands know the difference too. They recognize the comfortable weight of that old coffee mug, the exact spot where your thumb naturally rests. New things demand attention, require careful handling, but worn things, they fit like old friends. Well, here's what's fascinating. We become more like our favorite worn objects as we age. Our rough edges smooth into comfortable curves. Those laugh lines around your eyes, they're evidence of a life well lived, just like the patina on copper or the soft sheen of well-loved leather. The wrinkles on your hands map every dish washed, every garden tended, every face caressed. Makes sense, right? We're not falling apart. We're developing character. But speaking of developing character, have you ever noticed how traditional societies structured their days around this wisdom? The ancient rhythms of daily life held secrets about making every worn moment count. Ancient societies understood something we're just rediscovering. They didn't fight aging, they celebrated it. The Romans had a beautiful practice called hora septima, the seventh hour. This was when older citizens would gather in the forum, not for business, but for conversation and shared wisdom. They believed the day's most important decisions should happen when the elders were present. In traditional Japanese culture, turning 60 marked the beginning of the kanreki, literally meaning return to calendar. People would wear red clothing to celebrate this rebirth into a new phase of life. Red, the color of energy and joy, not mourning. Here's what gets fascinating. These ancient rhythms weren't arbitrary. They followed natural patterns that our modern research now confirms. The human body actually craves routine more as it ages. Our circadian rhythms strengthen, making us naturally better at maintaining healthy sleep-wake cycles. Traditional societies built their entire day around this wisdom. Morning meditation, midday rest, evening storytelling. They knew that aging bodies and minds thrive on predictable patterns. But here's the beautiful irony. What we used to call getting set in your ways is actually your brain optimizing for happiness. Those routines aren't limitations, they're freedom. And speaking of freedom, there's something remarkable happening to your emotional thermostat as you age. Your heart literally gets bigger as you age, not from disease or problems, but from decades of love, loss, and learning how to care deeper. The left ventricle walls thicken slightly, creating what cardiologists call a generous heart. Pretty poetic for medical folks, right? But here's what makes this even more beautiful. Research shows that people over 60 display more empathy in brain scans than younger adults. The anterior cingulate cortex, your compassion center, becomes hyperactive with age. You're not just imagining that grandparents seem kinder. Their brains are literally wired for more warmth. Then there's the temperature thing. Older adults actually run warmer emotionally and physically. The hypothalamus adjusts its thermostat, making you seek cozier environments. That explains why your grandma always has the heat cranked up and offers endless cups of tea. The fascinating part? This warmth extends to how you process memories. Aging brains prioritize positive emotional memories over negative ones. It's called the positivity effect, and it means your mental highlight reel automatically edits out the worst parts while preserving moments of joy and connection. Even your voice changes to reflect this warmth. Vocal cords develop what speech therapists call honeytones, deeper, more resonant sounds that naturally comfort listeners. Speaking of natural changes that surprise people, wait until you hear about how your brain actually gets better at forgetting certain things. Your brain operates like the world's most considerate librarian, quietly organizing your mental archives while you sleep. Unlike a computer that stores everything equally, your mind has developed an elegant system of strategic forgetting that actually protects your peace of mind. Neuroscientists have discovered that forgetting isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Your brain deliberately releases trivial information to make room for what truly matters. Remember that awkward conversation from 3 years ago? Your mind is slowly filing that under unnecessary baggage and letting it fade away. The hippocampus, your brain's filing cabinet, becomes increasingly selective with age. It's like having a wise secretary who throws away junk mail before it reaches your desk. This mental decluttering happens most actively during sleep, when your brain literally washes away cellular waste and redundant memories. Here's something fascinating. Older adults show enhanced ability to forget negative information while retaining positive experiences. It's as if your mind develops a built-in happiness filter, naturally gravitating toward memories that bring joy rather than stress. This selective forgetting explains why grandparents often remember the sweet moments from raising children while the sleepless nights blur into distant shadows. Your brain is essentially editing your life story, keeping the good parts and gently releasing the rest. Speaking of what your mind chooses to preserve, there's something beautiful about how certain spaces become sanctuaries for reflection. Gardens have this sneaky way of teaching us about aging without us even realizing it. Every seasoned gardener knows the secret. You can't rush a tomato or force a rose to bloom faster. Sound familiar? When you're young, gardening feels like a battle against nature. You want instant results, perfect rows, magazine-worthy blooms. But here's the thing. Plants don't care about your timeline. They follow their own rhythm, just like our bodies do as we age. The most beautiful gardens aren't the ones with flawless flowers. They're the weathered ones with character. That gnarled apple tree producing the sweetest fruit? It's been through decades of storms, droughts, and seasons that would kill a younger tree. Makes you think, right? Then there's the wisdom of pruning. Experienced gardeners know that cutting back isn't destruction, it's preparation for stronger growth. Sometimes our bodies do the same thing, naturally letting go of what we don't need anymore. The really fascinating part happens when you realize gardens age in seasons, not years. Spring always returns, even to the oldest soil. Perennials disappear completely, only to surprise you by pushing through again with renewed strength. But gardens reveal something even more profound about aging that most people never consider. Throughout history, humans have turned to symbols when words weren't enough to capture life's biggest truths. Ancient civilizations knew something we're just remembering. Aging isn't about decline, it's about endurance. And boy, did they get creative with their symbols. The Egyptians chose the scarab beetle. Why? Because this little guy rolls dung balls uphill all day, every day, for his entire life. Not exactly glamorous, right? But here's what's brilliant about it. The scarab never gives up. It just keeps pushing forward, one step at a time. Sound familiar? In China, the tortoise became the ultimate symbol of longevity and wisdom. These guys can live over 200 years, and they've mastered the art of taking life slowly. No rushing around, no frantic energy. Just steady, deliberate movement through decades of experience. Celtic cultures went with oak trees. Makes sense when you think about it. An oak grows stronger through storms, develops deeper roots over centuries, and provides shelter for countless creatures. The older it gets, the more valuable it becomes to everything around it. My grandmother always wore a small turtle pin on her cardigan. Never knew why until I learned about these ancient symbols. But here's what's fascinating about all these symbols. They share one common thread that connects to something even deeper about human nature. Your body actually becomes more tree-like as you age. No, seriously. Both humans and trees develop deeper root systems over time, prioritizing stability over expansion. While young trees shoot up fast and spread wide, older trees invest their energy downward, creating networks that can weather any storm. Your emotional roots work the same way. Remember how exhausting it was in your 20s, constantly uprooting yourself for new jobs, relationships, or adventures. That restless energy gradually transforms into something more valuable, the wisdom to know where you belong. Think about your favorite elderly neighbor. They've probably lived in the same house for decades, knows every shopkeeper by name, and can predict the weather better than meteorologists. That's not stubbornness. That's smart engineering. Deep roots provide access to resources shallow ones can't reach. But here's what's fascinating. Trees with the deepest roots actually live the longest. Some oak trees have root systems extending over 100 feet underground, creating their own personal support network that keeps them standing for centuries. Your social roots deepen too. Those fair-weather friendships naturally fall away, leaving relationships that can actually nourish you. Quality connections replace quantity collecting. You stop chasing approval from strangers and invest in people who genuinely matter. However, there's something even more remarkable happening while you're busy growing these roots. The stories we tell ourselves at bedtime change completely as we age. Remember being 5 and needing tales about brave knights or talking animals? Well, those epic adventures gradually transform into something much more comforting. Your brain starts craving different narratives around age 40. Instead of dragons and castles, you find peace in stories about people who figured things out. Characters who learn to appreciate small moments. heroes whose greatest victory was simply understanding themselves better. There's actually a reason for this shift. Your neural pathways have accumulated enough real-life drama by now. You've been the knight, fought the dragons, rescued people, and maybe even played the villain a few times. So your mind naturally gravitates towards stories that feel like a warm blanket rather than a roller coaster. The most beautiful part? Many older adults start creating mental bedtime stories from their own experiences. That time, you helped a stranger. The day you realized your parent was just a person trying their best. The moment you stopped worrying about what everyone else thought. These personal narratives become incredibly soothing because they remind you of your own resilience. You survived every difficult day so far. That's not a bad track record. But here's something fascinating about how our physical senses also transform to support this gentler storytelling. Your fingertips become connoisseurs as you age. That soft cashmere sweater you've owned for decades, it feels completely different now than it did 20 years ago. Not because the fabric changed, but because your touch receptors have become incredibly sophisticated. While we lose some nerve endings over time, the ones that remain become hypersensitive to textures that matter. Your brain literally rewires itself to focus on comforting sensations. Cool silk sheets, warm ceramic mugs, the smooth wooden handle of your favorite spoon. There's actually a neurological reason behind this. Your brain starts filtering out harsh or unpleasant textures while amplifying the ones that bring comfort. It's like having a personal texture sommelier living in your nervous system, curating only the finest sensory experiences. My grandmother could identify her favorite blanket in complete darkness just by running her fingers across one corner. That's not luck. That's decades of refined tactile wisdom. The fascinating part? Rough textures that once felt merely rough now tell entire stories. That weathered leather chair doesn't just feel worn, it feels like every conversation, every afternoon, nap, every moment of comfort it has provided. Your hands become archaeologists of texture, reading the history embedded in every surface they encounter. But touch sensitivity extends far beyond fabric and furniture. The most peaceful traditions for finding inner calm didn't come from modern self-help books. They emerged from kitchens. Ancient Chinese grandmothers knew that preparing jasmine tea was meditation disguised as a beverage break. The ritual of warming the pot, measuring leaves precisely, waiting for the perfect steeping time. Every step forced your racing mind to slow down. No rushing allowed. Mediterranean cultures had their own version. Evening walks weren't exercise routines back then. They were sacred, unwinding ceremonies where entire families would stroll through village squares, greeting neighbors and letting the day's worries dissolve with each unhurried step. The Japanese perfected the art of forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, long before anyone called it therapy. Simply standing among trees and breathing deeply was considered medicine. No special equipment needed. Just you, some oxygen, and ancient wisdom that your nervous system would thank you for. Then there's the Scandinavian concept of hygge, finding coziness in ordinary moments. Lighting a single candle during dinner transforms a meal into a peaceful ritual. Wrapping yourself in a soft blanket while reading becomes an act of self-care. These weren't complicated meditation retreats requiring special training. They were everyday practices that naturally calmed the mind through repetition and mindfulness. But here's what modern research reveals about our social connections as we age. Your social circle naturally shrinks as you age, and honestly, that's fantastic news for your peace of mind. Research shows that older adults maintain fewer friendships, but report much higher satisfaction with their relationships. While 20-somethings juggle dozens of superficial connections, people in their 60s and 70s focus their energy on maybe 5 to 10 truly meaningful bonds. Quality wins every time. The brain actually rewires itself to prioritize emotional satisfaction over social novelty. Makes sense, right? You've already met enough people to know who deserves your precious time and energy. Here's what's fascinating. Older adults become masters at avoiding toxic relationships. They can spot energy vampires from a mile away and have zero guilt about declining invitations that don't spark joy. It's like developing social superpowers through experience. Your tolerance for small talk naturally decreases while your appreciation for deep conversation skyrockets. Those 2-hour phone calls about nothing? Gone. Those intimate dinners discussing life's real questions? Pure gold. Even introverts benefit from this shift. The pressure to network and socialize constantly fades, replaced by the comfortable rhythm of chosen connections. You become selective, not antisocial. The most liberating part, you stop pretending to enjoy people you don't actually like. Your authentic self emerges, attracting genuine connections while naturally repelling the wrong ones. But here's something even more beautiful about how our bodies change their relationship with movement itself. Life taught me something funny about change. When my grandmother moved out of her house of 50 years, she packed like a pro, sorted belongings without tears, and actually seemed excited about her new apartment. Meanwhile, I was the one getting emotional about her leaving. Turns out, there's real wisdom behind this graceful adaptation. People who've lived longer have navigated countless transitions already. Job changes, moves, losses, celebrations. Each shift builds what researchers call transition muscle memory. Your brain literally gets better at handling change because it's done it so many times before. The secret lies in pattern recognition. When you've weathered enough storms, you start noticing they all follow similar rhythms. Initial resistance, gradual acceptance, eventual adaptation, and often unexpected benefits. It's like learning to ride waves instead of fighting them. But here's what surprised me most. Older adults don't just tolerate change better. They often embrace it more quickly than younger people. Why? Because they've learned the beautiful truth that staying flexible keeps you young at heart. They've seen how clinging too tightly to the way things were can cause unnecessary suffering. The brain actually develops specific neural pathways for processing transitions smoothly. Think of it as your internal GPS, recalculating the route without the dramatic recalculating announcement. Speaking of mornings, though, there's something almost magical about how they transform as we age. There's something almost sacred about those first few minutes of dawn when you're 65 versus when you were 25. Back then, mornings felt like starting pistols. Rush to shower, gulp coffee, sprint into the day. Now, they feel like gentle invitations. Your circadian rhythms have actually shifted to make you a natural early riser. While your teenage grandkid sleeps until noon, you're watching the world wake up in slow motion. The birds seem louder. The light appears softer. Even your coffee tastes more intentional. But here's what researchers discovered about aging brains and morning routines. Older adults produce less melatonin overall, but what they do produce gets released earlier in the evening. Translation? You fall asleep easier and wake up more naturally. No jarring alarms needed. The Japanese have a word, Ragio Taiso, for morning exercise routines that elderly people practice together in parks. Imagine hundreds of seniors moving in gentle synchronization as the sun rises. It's not about fitness goals or burning calories. It's pure ritual. Your brain releases more cortisol in the morning now, too, which sounds bad, but actually helps you feel alert without that jittery anxiety younger people experience. Makes sense, right? Even your shower routine becomes meditation when you're not racing against time. Speaking of time, did you know some ancient cultures believed aging bodies could literally feel different seasons approaching? Ancient cultures had a completely different relationship with aging bodies than we do today. Well, they saw wrinkles as maps of wisdom earned through decades of experience. In traditional Chinese medicine, practitioners believed that aging transformed the body into a vessel of accumulated knowledge. Each gray hair represented lessons learned. Every line around the eyes marked moments of deep understanding. Makes sense when you think about it that way, right? The Maori people of New Zealand viewed aged skin as sacred text written by time itself. Their elders' faces were considered living libraries, storing generations of wisdom in every crease and fold. They believed the body became more spiritually powerful as it accumulated years, not weaker. But here's what's really fascinating about this perspective. Ancient Greek physicians taught that aging bodies developed what they called pneuma, a refined life force that could only come through long experience. They genuinely believed older bodies carried more spiritual energy than young ones. Hindu traditions describe the aging process as the body preparing for ultimate wisdom. The physical changes weren't seen as decline, but as transformation into something more enlightened. Like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, except slower and with better stories. Even medieval European monasteries recognized that aged bodies required different care. Not because they were failing, but because they were transitioning into vessels of deeper understanding. Speaking of understanding, your emotions actually become more stable and manageable as your body ages. Your brain becomes a master emotional conductor somewhere around your 60s. Seriously. While everyone's worried about forgetting where they put their keys, something magical happens with feelings. Neuroscientists discovered that older brains literally rewire themselves for better emotional control. The amygdala, that drama queen part of your brain, finally learns to chill out. It stops firing off panic signals every time someone cuts you off in traffic, or your neighbor's dog barks at 3 a.m. But here's what's really cool. Your prefrontal cortex, the wise elder of brain regions, gets stronger at managing the emotional show. It's like having a really good therapist living in your head 24/7. This isn't wishful thinking. It's measurable brain changes that happen naturally. Remember being 20 and crying over everything? Yeah, your brain was basically an emotional pinball machine back then. Now it's more like a smooth jazz performance. Controlled, sophisticated, way less likely to make you text your ex at midnight. The funny part? Younger people think they're emotionally smarter because they feel everything so intensely. Meanwhile, you're over here with actual emotional wisdom, knowing which feelings deserve your attention and which ones can take a hike. This emotional mastery extends beyond just managing feelings, though. There's something even more fascinating about how attention itself transforms with age. Remember that frantic feeling of being late for everything? Running through airports? Checking your watch every 5 minutes? That constant buzz of urgency? Well, aging comes with an unexpected gift that nobody talks about enough. Time starts feeling different. Not slower exactly, but less urgent, less demanding. Your body literally teaches you patience through experience. That racing heart from missing a bus, it happens less often because you've learned to leave earlier. Or honestly, you've discovered the world doesn't end when you're 5 minutes late. There's actual research behind this shift. Our brains develop what researchers call temporal perspective as we age. Basically, we get better at judging how long things really take. No more thinking you can shower, eat breakfast, and drive across town in 15 minutes. You know better now. The funny thing is, this isn't about giving up or being slow. It's about efficiency through wisdom. You stop rushing because you've learned that rushing rarely saves meaningful time. It just makes everything more stressful. Your internal clock recalibrates to match reality instead of wishful thinking. Deadlines still matter, but they don't create the same panic. You've met enough of them to know you usually figure it out. But what happens when this newfound patience meets the way colors start looking different to aging eyes? Your eyes might be aging, but they're also becoming connoisseurs of beauty. That burgundy sweater you've owned for years suddenly looks more luxurious. The golden hour light streaming through your kitchen window seems impossibly rich. Even the faded blue of your favorite coffee mug appears deeper somehow. This isn't your imagination playing tricks. Well, actually it kind of is, but in the most wonderful way possible. As we age, our visual processing changes in fascinating ways. The lens in your eye naturally yellows over time, acting like a warm filter on everything you see. It's like Instagram decided to give your entire life a cozy, vintage effect. Those harsh, fluorescent lights that used to feel sterile, they're softened now. Colors gain warmth and depth. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain compensates for these changes by working harder to process visual information. This extra effort makes you pay more attention to what you're seeing. You're not just glancing anymore. You're actually looking. That increased attention creates a deeper appreciation for visual beauty. You notice the way afternoon light catches dust motes dancing in the air. The intricate patterns in wood grain become mesmerizing. Even grocery store produce looks like a still life painting. Your eyes are teaching you to be present, to really see instead of just looking. Speaking of seeing differently, wait until you discover what happens to your sense of smell. Throughout history, cultures worldwide developed beautiful systems for caring for their elders that would make modern society blush with envy. The ancient Chinese concept of filial piety wasn't just respect. It was an art form where caring for aging parents became the highest honor a family could achieve. In traditional Japanese homes, the eldest family members received the warmest spot by the fire and the first serving at every meal. Not because they demanded it, but because wisdom literally came before youth in the serving order. Makes perfect sense when you think about it. Ancient Greek households included multiple generations under one roof, creating what researchers now call natural support networks. Grandparents weren't shipped off somewhere. They were the family treasure, consulted on everything from weather predictions to marriage advice. Here's what's fascinating. These societies understood something we're just rediscovering. Caring for elders wasn't a burden. It was an investment in emotional intelligence. Children who grew up around aging relatives develop deeper empathy and better problem-solving skills. The Maasai people of Africa still practice this beautifully. Elder care flows naturally through extended family networks, with younger members competing for the privilege of learning from their elders' stories and knowledge. But here's where our modern brains really start clicking into gear with all this wisdom. Your brain has been quietly collecting wisdom for decades, storing it like a master librarian who knows exactly where to find the good stuff. While younger minds might be faster at memorizing random phone numbers, your brain has developed something far more valuable: crystallized intelligence. This is the type of knowledge that actually gets better with age. Unlike fluid intelligence, which peaks in your 20s and handles things like processing speed, crystallized intelligence keeps growing. It's your vocabulary, your understanding of how the world works, your ability to see patterns that younger people miss completely. Think about it this way. A 20-year-old might beat you at a video game, but they'd probably ask you for advice about relationships, career decisions, or how to handle difficult people. That's crystallized intelligence in action. The best part? Your brain has been unconsciously organizing all this wisdom into easily accessible files. When someone asks for advice, you don't have to think hard about the answer. It just flows naturally from years of accumulated experience. Research shows that this type of intelligence can keep improving well into your 70s and 80s. Your brain becomes like a fine wine cellar, where age only adds value to what's stored inside. But there's another fascinating change happening as you age that goes beyond just being smart. There's something deeply comforting about watching a master chef step back and let their sous chef take over the signature dish. They're not abandoning their craft. They're showing the highest form of confidence. This mirrors what happens naturally as we age. We shift from being the person who has to control everything to becoming the person who knows when to guide from the sidelines. It's like being the wise librarian who points someone toward the perfect book instead of reading it to them. Research shows that people in their 70s and 80s often become better mentors than they ever were as direct leaders. Why? Because they've learned the secret sauce of influence. Sometimes the best way to help someone succeed is to get out of their way. Think about it. When you were younger, you probably felt like you had to prove your worth by doing everything yourself. Now, there's genuine peace in watching others flourish under your gentle guidance. The most experienced gardeners know this truth intimately. They don't hover over every seedling. They create the right conditions, offer support when needed, and trust the natural process. Your accumulated wisdom becomes like a lighthouse, steady, reliable, always there when someone needs direction. But here's what's fascinating about how our actual memories work as we age. Your grandmother's tales about walking 5 miles to school weren't just complaints about modern convenience. They were treasure maps to understanding how stories shape our sense of self as we age. When we get older, something fascinating happens to our relationship with narrative. The same brain that once craved new experiences starts finding deeper meaning in the stories we've already lived. It's like switching from collecting books to actually reading the ones on your shelf. Research shows that people over 60 spend significantly more time reminiscing than younger adults. But here's what's really interesting. They're not just remembering randomly. The brain becomes incredibly selective, choosing stories that reinforce positive identity and life meaning. Think about your favorite family storyteller. Notice how they tell the same tales repeatedly? That's not forgetfulness. That's wisdom in action. Each retelling polishes the story like a river stone, smoothing rough edges and highlighting the parts that matter most. The stories we choose to keep and retell become the foundation of what psychologists call narrative identity. It's how we make sense of who we are and where we belong. The funny thing is, these stories often become more important than the facts themselves. Your tales of triumph over that impossible boss, or the time you figured out how to fix the washing machine, become genuine treasures. Speaking of treasures, ancient cultures understood something profound about traditional remedies that modern medicine is just rediscovering. Ancient healers understood something modern medicine is just rediscovering. The soul needs tending as much as the body, especially as we age. Those old remedies weren't just about herbs and potions. They were about healing the deeper aches that come with getting older. Take the Japanese practice of forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku. Elderly people would spend hours among trees, not hiking or exercising, just being present. The trees released compounds called phytoncides that actually boosted immune function. But the real magic, the profound sense of connection and peace that came from simply existing alongside something ancient and enduring. Celtic Druids prescribed storytelling circles for aging members of their communities. Sharing memories and wisdom wasn't just social activity. It was medicine for what they called soul loneliness. Research now shows that meaningful conversation releases oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers to babies. Traditional Chinese medicine included something called grandmother tea ceremonies. These weren't fancy rituals, just older women gathering to share simple tea and gentle conversation. The warming herbs helped arthritis, sure, but the real healing happened in the sharing of life's small victories and quiet sorrows. Even Native American sweat lodges served as spiritual medicine for elders, cleansing not just the body, but years of accumulated worry. These ancient wisdom keepers knew that joy itself can be medicine. Think about compound interest at your bank. Each deposit adds up over time, creating wealth you didn't expect. Your brain does something remarkably similar with joy throughout your entire life. Every laugh with a friend makes a deposit. Each sunset, you pause to appreciate adds to the account. That random moment when your coffee tastes perfect, another contribution to your happiness savings. But here's what banks don't tell you about their compound interest. It's nothing compared to what your mind does with positive experiences. Research shows that older adults recall happy memories with incredible vividness, while painful ones naturally fade. It's like your brain becomes a selective archivist, carefully preserving the good stuff and letting the rest gather dust in forgotten corners. A 70-year-old grandmother can describe her wedding day like it happened yesterday. The smell of her bouquet, the way the light hit her dress, how her husband's hands shook during the vows. Meanwhile, she might struggle to remember what frustrated her last Tuesday. This isn't memory loss, it's memory wisdom. Your neural pathways literally strengthen around positive experiences while weakening around negative ones. The joy deposits compound, while the stress withdrawals disappear. That collection of accumulated happiness becomes your emotional retirement fund. Rich, accessible, and growing more valuable each year. Speaking of things that grow more valuable with time, Your brain becomes a master curator as you age, developing an almost magical ability to recognize what truly matters in any given moment. While younger minds often scatter attention like confetti at a parade, older brains learn the art of selective focus. They filter out the noise and zoom in on genuine beauty. This isn't about declining awareness. It's about upgraded awareness. Your neural pathways have been practicing for decades, learning to distinguish between fleeting distractions and moments worth savoring. That sunset hits differently when you've seen enough of them to know which ones are spectacular. The laugh of a grandchild registers with crystal clarity, while the neighbor's leaf blower fades to background static. The funny thing? You probably don't even realize you're doing it. Your brain has become like that friend who always knows the best restaurant in any neighborhood. Experience has taught it what's worth your emotional investment. Research shows that older adults demonstrate superior emotional regulation, partly because they've learned to direct attention toward positive experiences. They're not being naive or wearing rose-colored glasses. They're being efficient. Why waste mental energy on irritations when there's genuine joy available? This selective attention creates more frequent, perfect moments. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you become perfect at recognizing life's gems. Speaking of recognition, your hands have been quietly documenting every one of these moments. Look down at your hands right now. Go ahead. Really look at them. Those lines weren't there when you were 20, were they? But here's something beautiful. Each one tells a story that no book could capture. Your hands have become living maps of everything you've touched, held, and created. That callus from years of gardening, that's your love for growing things, written in skin. Those gentle wrinkles around your knuckles, they're from a million handshakes, hugs, and moments of connection. The funny thing is, we spend so much time worrying about wrinkles on our faces that we forget our hands are telling the most honest stories of all. They've kneaded bread, changed diapers, held hands during scary movies, and applauded at graduations. Makes you wonder why we ever tried to hide them. But here's what gets really interesting about aging hands. They actually become more sensitive to meaningful touch. Not rough textures or harsh surfaces, but the gentle stuff that matters. A grandchild's soft cheek, worn fabric from a favorite sweater, the smooth bark of an old tree. Your hands have learned to seek comfort and give it in return. They've developed their own wisdom about what feels good and what doesn't. And speaking of things that develop their own wisdom with time, wait until you hear what happens when we start thinking about our entire lives as chapters in a book. Life has always been described as a book, and different cultures throughout history understood this better than we do today. The ancient Greeks called life stages acts in a grand drama. Chinese philosophers spoke of life's volumes, unfolding like poetry. Native American traditions described existence as chapters written by the wind. Well, here's something beautiful about reaching those later chapters. You've already read ahead. Not literally, obviously, but your brain has collected enough patterns to predict how certain stories end. That friend who always creates drama? You know that story. The coworker who promises big changes but never delivers? Chapter 12 of a familiar tale. This pattern recognition isn't cynicism, it's wisdom. Ancient Persian texts called it the gift of the experienced eye. You can spot trouble before it fully forms, which means you can also recognize genuine joy when it appears. But the real magic happens when you realize you're not just reading your life anymore. You're editing it, cutting boring chapters short, skipping ahead through unnecessary drama, spending more time on the parts that actually matter. The Stoics had a phrase for this: authoring your own epilogue. They understood that wisdom meant knowing which stories deserved your attention and which ones you could simply close. Speaking of closing things gently, there's something remarkable about how aging transforms our relationship with power itself. Your muscles know a secret that fitness influencers never mention. Real strength isn't about how much weight you can lift or how fast you can run. It's about influence, wisdom, and the kind of power that doesn't need to flex. When you're younger, strength feels like a hammer. You attack problems head on, muscle through challenges, and believe force equals results. But aging transforms that hammer into something far more elegant: a conductor's baton. Think about it. A symphony conductor doesn't need biceps to control a 100-piece orchestra. One gentle gesture commands violins, cellos, and trumpets in perfect harmony. That's the strength evolution happening inside your body right now. Your physical muscles might not bounce back like they used to, but your emotional strength becomes superhuman. You learn to influence rather than intimidate, to guide instead of grab, to suggest rather than shout. Research shows older adults excel at conflict resolution because they've developed what experts call gentle strength. It's the ability to achieve more by doing less. Your presence becomes your power. The most fascinating part? This isn't weakness wearing a disguise. It's strength that's so confident it doesn't need to prove itself. Like a master craftsman who can carve intricate details with the lightest touch. Speaking of repetition, there's something deeply comforting about how familiar patterns start feeling like warm embraces. There's something deeply comforting about doing the same thing every day at the same time. Your morning coffee ritual, the way you fold laundry, even how you arrange your pillows before bed. These aren't boring habits. They're your body's way of creating peace. Research shows that familiar routines literally calm our nervous system. When we repeat actions, our brain releases less stress hormones because it knows what's coming next. It's like giving your mind a warm hug. The beautiful part? As we age, these patterns become even more soothing. That daily walk around the block isn't just exercise, it's meditation in motion. Your evening tea ceremony isn't just a drink, it's a signal to your body that rest is coming. Think about elderly couples who've been married 50 years. They move around each other like dancers who know every step. No conversation needed. Pure choreography of comfort. Your brain actually craves this predictability more as you get older. It's not becoming boring. You're becoming wise enough to know what truly brings peace. The same route to the grocery store, the same chair for reading, the same bedtime routine. These repetitions aren't limiting your life. They're creating a foundation of calm that lets you appreciate everything else more deeply. But what happens when those familiar tastes start triggering powerful memories? Remember when your grandmother's apple pie could transport you instantly to childhood summers? That magical connection between taste and memory becomes stronger as we age, turning every meal into a potential time machine. Our taste buds don't just detect flavors anymore. They become emotional archaeologists, digging up decades of buried experiences with each bite. That morning, coffee doesn't just wake you up, It whispers stories of every important conversation you've had over coffee throughout your life. Food scientists have discovered something beautiful about aging palates. While we might lose some sensitivity to basic tastes, we gain something far more valuable: the ability to taste memories. Your brain starts layering current flavors with emotional connections from the past. Makes sense, right? You've had thousands more meals than younger people. Each flavor has collected stories along the way. The vanilla in your birthday cake carries echoes of every celebration. Salt might remind you of ocean vacations. Even simple bread can trigger memories of family dinners, first dates, or quiet Sunday mornings. This isn't just nostalgia. It's your brain creating comfort through familiar tastes. Every bite becomes a gentle reunion with your past self. Food stops being just fuel and transforms into edible autobiography. Your taste buds are writing the story of your life, one flavor at a time. Speaking of stories, there's something equally comforting about how different cultures have always celebrated the accumulation of life experiences. Throughout history, cultures worldwide have understood something beautiful about growing older. They didn't just tolerate aging, they celebrated it with genuine reverence. The Japanese have a tradition called kanreki, celebrating someone's 60th birthday as a rebirth. Why 60? Because that's when you've completed a full cycle of the zodiac calendar. You're literally beginning life anew, but with 6 decades of wisdom backing you up. Pretty amazing perspective, right? Ancient Romans threw elaborate parties for milestone birthdays, believing each year survived was a victory worth honoring. They'd light candles equal to the person's age. Imagine being 90 and having that bonfire. The birthday cake tradition we know today actually started as these Roman celebrations of endurance. In many African cultures, elders receive new names that reflect their accumulated wisdom. Your identity literally evolves to honor everything you've learned. Instead of being defined by what you once were, you're celebrated for who you've become. The Inuit people have ceremonies where community members share stories about the elders' life contributions. Each tale becomes part of a living legacy, proving that survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about making life meaningful for others. These traditions remind us that reaching advanced age has always been considered an extraordinary achievement worthy of celebration. Speaking of extraordinary achievements, there's something fascinating about how sleep itself becomes a celebration of life. Your sleep patterns are getting ready to become your best friend as you age. While younger folks struggle with racing minds and midnight anxiety spirals, older adults naturally develop what researchers call sleep efficiency. Sounds fancy, but it just means your body gets better at actually resting when it's time to rest. Here's something that'll make you smile. Those afternoon naps you might feel guilty about. They're becoming a biological necessity, not laziness. Your circadian rhythms are shifting toward what's called a biphasic sleep pattern. Basically, your body wants 2 sleep periods instead of 1 marathon session. Smart move, body. The deep sleep stages, though shorter, become incredibly restorative. Think of it like upgrading from a regular car wash to a premium detail job. Less time, better results. Your brain uses these precious hours to clear out cellular debris and consolidate the memories worth keeping. Temperature regulation improves too. No more waking up in a sweat because you misjudged the blanket situation. Your body becomes a sleep thermostat expert. Even better, sleep anxiety tends to fade. When you've lived through decades of tomorrow's problems somehow working themselves out, bedtime becomes less about worry and more about welcome rest. But what happens when your mind starts naturally curating which memories deserve that premium sleep processing treatment? There's something deeply comforting about objects that show their age. A leather jacket that's molded to its owner's shoulders, a wooden table worn smooth by countless meals and conversations, even wrinkles on a beloved grandmother's face. This isn't just sentimentality talking. There's actual philosophy behind why weathered beauty feels more authentic than pristine perfection. The Japanese have a concept called wabi-sabi that celebrates imperfection and impermanence. They see beauty in rust, cracks, and faded colors. Your aging body follows this same principle. Those laugh lines? They're proof you've experienced joy. The gentle softening around your edges isn't deterioration. It's evidence of a life fully lived. Ancient cultures understood this better than we do today. Roman sculptures often depicted older figures with dignity, showing every line and mark as badges of honor. They knew that a face without character was just, well, boring. But here's what's fascinating about weathered beauty. It actually becomes more interesting over time, not less. A brand new car looks like every other new car. But an old truck with dents and scratches? That vehicle has stories. The same applies to people. Character beats perfection every single time. Now, speaking of stories written on our bodies, there's something magical happening with every breath you take. Your breath is probably the most underrated anti-aging tool you've got. And you've been carrying it around this whole time without realizing its power. Most people think breathing just happens automatically. Well, it does. But here's what changes as we get older. We actually start paying attention to it. That automatic pilot mode begins to shift into something more intentional. Monks have known this secret for centuries. They've been using breath as meditation long before anyone invented fancy apps or wellness retreats. Turns out, they were onto something pretty brilliant. When you're 20, you breathe about 15 to 20 times per minute without thinking twice about it. By 60, many people naturally slow down to 12 to 16 breaths per minute. Your body is literally teaching you to be more mindful. The beautiful part? Each breath becomes more deliberate. You start noticing the pause between inhaling and exhaling, that tiny moment of stillness that younger folks rush right through. There's something almost funny about how we spend decades chasing expensive relaxation techniques when the best one has been sitting right under our nose the entire time. Literally under our nose. Your rib cage becomes a gentle teacher, showing you how expansion and contraction create their own peaceful rhythm. No subscription required. But breathing isn't the only thing that transforms into unexpected meditation as we age. Throughout history, cultures worldwide developed remarkably similar approaches to aging gracefully, almost as if they shared some secret manual. The ancient Chinese practiced Tai Chi, moving like water through gentle forms that kept bodies flexible well into their 90s. Meanwhile, Mediterranean societies perfected the art of afternoon conversations, gathering in town squares to share wisdom and laughter. Japanese elders mastered the concept of ikigai, finding purpose in small daily acts. They'd tend tiny gardens, perfect simple crafts, or mentor younger generations. Nothing flashy, just meaningful. The Hunza people of Pakistan built their entire culture around respecting elders, believing that gray hair literally contained concentrated wisdom. Here's what's fascinating. These societies rarely rushed anywhere. They understood that graceful aging meant moving like honey instead of water. Slow, deliberate, and sweet. Ancient Greeks had walking discussions called peripatetic conversations. They'd stroll while solving life's problems, combining gentle exercise with mental stimulation. Pretty clever, right? Indigenous cultures often gave elders the most important job of all: storytelling. They became living libraries, preserving knowledge through tales that entertained while teaching. The common thread? Every culture that aged beautifully focused on community, purpose, and gentle movement. They treated growing older like an art form, requiring practice and patience. But here's where modern research gets really interesting about what happens when your brain learns to focus differently. Your brain performs an incredible magic trick as you age. It becomes remarkably skilled at filtering out the noise and zeroing in on what truly matters. While younger minds scatter attention like confetti at a parade, older brains develop laser-like focus on the meaningful stuff. This isn't about losing mental sharpness. Actually, it's the opposite. Think of it like a master gardener who knows exactly which plants deserve water and which weeds to ignore. Your attention becomes precious real estate, and you start charging rent to thoughts that want to move in. Research shows that older adults naturally tune out distractions that would completely derail younger people. A 20-year-old hears every car horn, phone buzz, and random conversation. But someone in their 70s, their brain says, nope, not important, and keeps focus on the grandchild's story or the sunset painting the sky. The hippocampus actually rewires itself to support this selective attention. It's like having a personal assistant who screens your calls and only lets through the VIPs. Stress hormones decrease when you stop trying to pay attention to everything simultaneously. Your energy becomes finite and precious, so your brain wisely invests it in relationships, beauty, and experiences that feed your soul. Makes sense, right? Why waste mental bandwidth on trivial annoyances when there's so much genuine goodness to absorb? But living authentically brings its own special kind of peace. Getting older has this funny way of making you care less about sugarcoating things. Not in a mean way, but in a beautifully liberating way. Remember when you used to dance around difficult conversations? When saying no felt like climbing Mount Everest? Those days gradually fade as you age. Your truth-telling muscles get stronger, but here's the twist. They also get gentler. Studies show that older adults become remarkably skilled at delivering honest feedback without crushing feelings. It's like developing a superpower called diplomatic authenticity. You learn to say what needs saying while wrapping it in kindness. The fear of judgment that haunted your younger years? It starts evaporating like morning mist. When you've lived long enough to see how little most opinions matter, speaking your truth becomes as natural as breathing. There's something deliciously freeing about reaching the age where you can say, I don't like that restaurant, instead of pretending it's amazing. Or admitting you're tired instead of powering through social events that drain you. Your honesty even becomes more accurate with age. Life experience teaches you to read situations better, so your truthful observations actually help people more than polite fiction ever could. But perhaps the most beautiful part? You start being truthful with yourself too. No more pretending to be someone you're not. Speaking of being authentic, wait until you discover how this honesty transforms your relationship with time itself. As we grow older, Something magical happens with our relationship to the changing seasons. What once felt like background noise becomes a symphony we actually notice. Remember rushing through autumn as a kid? Now those golden leaves deserve a proper look. The crisp air feels like an old friend returning. Winter's quiet snow becomes less about inconvenience and more about the world taking a well-deserved nap. Spring hits differently too. Those first green buds carry weight they never had before. Each bloom feels earned, precious. You might find yourself actually caring about when the daffodils emerge. Your neighbors probably think you've lost it, standing there grinning at a crocus. But here's what's really happening in your brain. The neural pathways that once prioritized speed and efficiency start appreciating rhythm instead. Your internal clock begins syncing with nature's slower, deeper beat. Makes sense, right? You've lived through enough seasons to recognize their personalities. Summer's lazy confidence, fall's bittersweet wisdom, winter's honest starkness, spring's unstoppable hope. This seasonal awareness becomes a form of meditation without trying. Each weather change reminds you that everything has its time, including you. And speaking of time, there's something even more profound about how our ancestors understood the art of release. Throughout human history, every culture discovered the same profound truth about growing older. The art of letting go isn't just helpful advice, it's literally how our brains rewire themselves for peace. Ancient Buddhist monks called it non-attachment. Greek philosophers termed it acceptance. Vikings spoke of releasing grip. Different words, identical wisdom. They all figured out that holding on to things too tightly makes life exhausting. Your brain actually becomes better at this with age. Neuroscientists found that older adults show less activity in the amygdala, that's your worry center, when facing stressful situations. Translation: you naturally become calmer about things that used to drive you crazy. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei teaches effortless action. Stop pushing the river, start flowing with it. Sounds mystical, but it's practical psychology. Fighting reality burns energy. Accepting it conserves strength. Ancient Japanese have a beautiful phrase, shikata ga nai. It means it cannot be helped, but without defeat. More like gentle acknowledgement that some things simply are what they are. Here's what makes this remarkable. Every generation rediscovers this wisdom independently. Your great-grandmother probably told you similar things. She was passing down thousands of years of human understanding about peaceful surrender. Even your changing body teaches lessons about release. But there's something fascinating about how this accumulated life wisdom actually changes your brain's architecture. Your brain has been collecting wisdom deposits for decades, and neuroscientists have discovered something remarkable. Each challenging experience you've navigated actually creates stronger neural pathways dedicated to calm decision-making. It's like your mind has been building a personal library of how to handle this guides. When you were 20 and faced a crisis, your brain scrambled through limited options. Now, you've got entire filing cabinets of solutions. That ex-colleague who used to drive you crazy taught your neurons patience. The time you lost your job showed your brain resilience. Even that terrible dinner party from 15 years ago contributed to your social wisdom database. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's CEO, becomes more efficient with accumulated experience. It stops wasting energy on minor irritations because it recognizes patterns. Your neural networks have literally rewired themselves around what actually matters versus what just feels urgent in the moment. This explains why your grandmother could navigate family drama with such grace. Her brain had processed thousands of similar situations and developed shortcuts to peace. Each decade adds more data to your internal wisdom algorithm. But there's something even more beautiful happening in your aging mind. Beyond just collecting experiences, your brain starts focusing on a completely different type of existence altogether. There's something magical that happens when you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone around you. Your body has been teaching you this lesson for decades, quietly shifting from doing mode into being mode. Think about a tree in autumn. It doesn't frantically try to keep every leaf green. It lets go, stands tall, and simply exists in all its natural glory. That's exactly what aging does for humans. The constant need to hustle, impress, and achieve starts feeling less urgent. Not because you've given up, but because you finally figured out what actually matters. Your worth isn't tied to your productivity anymore. Here's what researchers discovered about older adults. They spend significantly more time just experiencing life rather than constantly trying to change it. A sunset becomes perfect entertainment. A good cup of coffee turns into a complete event. The funny thing? This shift toward being instead of doing actually makes you more attractive to be around. People gravitate toward those who aren't desperately trying to be someone else. Your nervous system literally calms down when you embrace this transition. Stress hormones decrease. Blood pressure often improves. Sleep gets deeper. It's like your body is saying, "Finally, you get it." But here's something even more beautiful about this peaceful transformation. There's something beautifully circular about how aging prepares us for the most peaceful rest of all. Like a river that flows more gently as it approaches the ocean, our bodies and minds naturally learn to embrace tranquility. The ancient Greeks believed sleep was the cousin of death, not in a morbid way, but as a recognition that we practice letting go every single night. By the time we've lived 70 or 80 years, we've essentially rehearsed peaceful surrender over 25,000 times. Your brain actually begins producing more sleep-promoting chemicals as you age. It's as if your mind is gently coaching you toward deeper rest. The neurons that once fired frantically with youthful anxiety start to hum in slower, more harmonious rhythms. Ever notice how older people often speak of feeling tired, but not necessarily unhappy about it? That's your nervous system wisely shifting from fight or flight to rest and digest mode. The urgency fades. The rushing stops. In many cultures, elders are said to have one foot in this world and one in the next. But here's what's remarkable. That transition zone is described universally as peaceful. The Tibetans call it bardo. The Mexicans speak of crossing over gently. Even your breathing naturally slows with age, mimicking the eternal rhythm that rocks babies to sleep and waves against shores. Everything returns to the gentle pulse of rest.